Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 National Conference of the Philippine Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, or the PH-EITI. Good morning to all our viewers on Zoom and to all those who are joining us also on Facebook and YouTube. Naimbag gabigat to our Ilocano viewers, and for our Cebuano viewers, maayong buntag sa inyong tanan. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat at naway ang lahat sa atin ay nananatiling ligtas at malusog. I am Trisha Terada and I will be your host this morning. Before we proceed with this virtual event, let us pause for a bit to give praise and also sing the Philippine National Anthem.
Father, we thank you for this event and your purpose for it. We ask for your presence as we gather together, and for your will to be done through this event. Take what we have prepared and multiply our efforts as only you can. Steer our plans and intentions to align with your righteous will. Remind us of your faithful provision when our efforts fail us or fall short. Grant us your joy, peace, and wisdom as we perform our tasks. Keep compassion, integrity, and excellence at the forefront of our hearts and minds. Be the guiding light for all we set out to do and accomplish. Enable us to be faithful stewards of your grace, and to use the gifts you have given us to serve one another, and to honor and glorify you. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Well, as many of us already know, the PH-EITI since 2013 has been promoting and advancing transparency, openness, and accountability in the governance and management of our country's mineral, oil, and gas resources. Through the concerted efforts and the partnership of the government, industry, and the civil societies who all believe in the value of transparency, the PH-EITI continues to help ensure that the extraction of our natural resources benefit the people and contribute to sustainable development. This year's national conference bears the theme Resiliency and Transparency, very timely as we face various calamities and risks, just like the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we want to know how our data transparency efforts can help build resilient communities and inclusive economy. To give us insights on this matter and to officially open and welcome everyone to this virtual event, we have with us our Finance Secretary, Honorable Carlos G. Dominguez.
Honorable Representative Joey Salceda, fellow workers in government, members of the Philippine Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative Multi-Stakeholder Group, members of the Academe, development partners, good morning. It is with great pleasure that I welcome all of you to this 8th National Conference of the Philippine EITI, or Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. This forum will also serve as the public launch of the 7th EITI report. The report contains the results of our continuing efforts to promote transparency and accountability in oil, gas, coal, and mining industries. This is the second year that we are holding this meeting online due to the pandemic. This underscores the exceptional circumstances under which we have to operate into the foreseeable future. Nevertheless, I congratulate the EITI for its efforts to organize this national conference and produce an annual report despite all the challenges. By their nature, the extractive industries involve multifaceted and complex issues. It is easy to merely brand extractive practices as harmful to the environment. Regulations must ensure the balance between economic and environmental concerns to realize the best outcomes for our people. The EITI helps in achieving that balance by providing fair and accurate data about the extractive industries. It is a source of credible information to inform policymakers on the appropriate fiscal regime for mining. It helps ensure that the extraction of our natural resources will substantially contribute to the sustainable development of the nation. In addition, the EITI enables the productive exchange of information and positive dialogue among stakeholders. This clears the air of misinformation. This also encourages the extractive industries to be constantly mindful of their responsibilities to society and the advocacy groups to be always vigilant in checking facts. The most important value we need to uphold at all times is transparency. Without this, there will be constant suspicion and all sorts of unfounded claims. With full transparency, we can better assess the costs and benefits of the extractive industries. Increased accountability will improve governance of the sector and management of natural resources. This will serve both the sector's and the community's best interests. Data transparency does not only build public trust, but it also contributes to institutional and sectoral resilience. Transparency allows the free flow of accurate information. This, in turn, enables better coordination, appropriate interventions, and greater agility in times of crisis. The Duterte administration recognizes the important contribution of the extractive industries to our economic resiliency during this pandemic. We will continue to rely on this sector to provide much needed revenues, create job opportunities for our people, and drive our economic growth. At the same time, we are committed to continue striking that delicate balance between economic development and environmental stewardship. I look forward to a fruitful meeting today. I thank our partners and stakeholders for their continuing support to make extractives transparency an important tool for sustainable economic development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Dominguez, for your opening message. Joining us today as a keynote speaker is a five-term member of the House of Representatives who has held senior roles in the most important committees of the chamber. He is currently the chairperson of the House Committee on Ways and Means and of the House Ad hoc Committee on Military and Uniformed Personnel, or MUP, Pension Reform, and the vice chairperson of the House Committee on Appropriations and Committee on Economic Affairs. He is also the co chairperson of the Economic Stimulus Response Package, or ESRP, cluster of the Defeat COVID 19 Special Committee. He once served as the presidential chief of staff of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and advisor to President Benigno S. Aquino III. Under President Duterte, he authored crucial socio-economic legislations, including the Comprehensive Tax Reform Program, and he also authored the creation of the Centers of Disease Control and the Charter of the Virology Institute of the Philippines. The Commission on Higher Education, or CHED, has recognized him as the father of the free college tuition law. In his three-term stint as governor of Albay, he earned several recognitions for accomplishments in health, education, governance, environment, tourism, and economic dynamism and competitiveness. To share with us his thoughts on extractive transparency, economic resiliency, and better resource governance is a representative of the 2nd District of Albay and chair of the House of Representatives Committee on Ways and Means. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the Honorable Representative Joey Salceda. Sir, it's an honor to have you here. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much. Secretary Dominguez, both my partner and my mentor in crafting meaningful tax reforms for this country's immediate recovery and long-term prosperity. Members of the civil society organization with whom I've worked, friends from the private and multilateral sectors, fellow workers in government, good morning. I thank the DOF and the Extractive Industries Transparency Institute for this invitation. Natural wealth, particularly non-renewable natural wealth, is not an alloyed blessing. Countries that have depended on natural wealth have experienced wild boom and bust cycles that correlate with the gyrations in commodity prices. Pair an economically indispensable extractive sector with bad policies and bad governance, and the results can be devastating. We all need to look back to the 1970s to learn from our own country's experience of this. The international commodities boom during the Marcos era led to then unprecedented levels of growth in 1974 to 1976. Times were euphoric. However, we did not have the framework for reining in the excesses of an export boom and tax and governance mechanisms to capture value created in the best of times. Thus, we were completely unprepared for the price slump that the laws of gravity dictate to be inevitable. We actually call it in the stock market as reversion to mean. The results were catastrophic. A balance of payments crisis soon ensued by 1980s. By 1983, things reached their boiling point, and by 1986, Marcos was out of office. They call this the economic paradox of Dutch disease. That era shaped my consciousness because I was then in college, both as an economist for the private sector, now, after, and later on as a policymaker. When I was an investment banker, I had the privilege of presenting investment proposals about Philippine equities before the King of Norway, monarch of one of the most rich oil-rich countries in the world. Norway is a model for an economy that has managed to avoid the curse of natural wealth by investing its revenues on its people and essentially investing abroad. Today, the government pension fund of Norway, one of two, it's called the Oil Fund, is the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, owning $1.3 trillion in assets and almost 1.4% of global equities. Beyond enriching the Norwegian economy, the fund has become a means for Norway to project soft power by influencing corporate boardrooms towards more sustainable and more equitable governance. Norway was able to use oil as a force for good, something that does not happen very often. The Philippines is capable of taking a similar path. It will be foolish not to learn from our history. The country is the fifth most mineralized country in the world for gold, nickel, copper, and chromite. It is also home to the largest copper gold deposit in the world, estimates suggest that up to $840 billion of untapped mineral wealth is in the Philippine soil. This is not to mention the 17.1 billion barrels of oil deposits that China's own Ministry of Geology and Mineral Resources estimate to be in the Spratlys, or the 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas that the U.S. Energy Information Administration believes to be in the same area. These resources, if extracted and managed properly, could make the Philippines one of the richest countries of the world. However, there are obvious deficiencies in our governance of natural wealth. The most obvious one is the lack of coherent fiscal regime of mining, particularly one that sets aside funds for the rehabilitation and investment. First, let us address the lack of a coherent fiscal regime. Executive Order 79, Series of 2012, imposed a ban on new mining arrangement until a legislation rationalizing existing revenue sharing schemes and mechanisms shall have taken effect. The declared purpose of EU 79 was to improve environmental mining standards and create revenues to promote sustainable economic development and social growth, both at the national level and the local levels, especially to host communities as enshrined in our Constitution. To fulfill these objectives and to maximize the economic benefits of the mining sector or the extractive sectors, Congress has attempted to pass a new fiscal regime for the mining industry. In the 18th Congress, the House Committee on Ways and Means enacted a new fiscal regime for mining, approving House Bill 6135 in the committee as early as January 30, 2020. The proposal mainly builds on the proposal of the DOF, including the crucial administrative provisions on ring fencing, institutionalization of the extractive industry's transparency initiative. In short, the EITI should be a part of life in doing business in this particular industry, and mandatory registration of small-scale miners for tax purposes. With the issuance of EO 130 amending Section 4 of Executive Order 79, Series of 2012, the moratorium imposed by the latter on new mining agreements was lifted, and so was the pressure to enact a new fiscal regime on the industry. The executive order, however, has several areas for improvement. First, neither Congress nor the Department of Finance, the country's fiscal policymaker and fiscal administrator, respectively, are given a specific role in this process by the new EO. Second, I am uncertain whether the EO itself can be used as a basis for negotiating the revenue shares for mining agreements. Mineral wealth is a resource owned by the state, according to Article 12, Section 2 of the 1987 Constitution. The Constitution furthermore provides that exploration, development, and utilization of natural resources shall be under the full control and supervision of the state. In other words, any negotiation of terms of mineral agreements, including revenue share, must have the full backing of law and not merely the executive branch. Where the terms of revenue sharing are concerned, guidelines set in law must be in place to set the baseline share of the government. Third, it appears that the EO may have expected of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources a power they do not necessarily have by law or by the Constitution. The basis for the revenue share of the government in mineral production sharing agreements is clarified in Section 151A of the NIRC as affirmed by Republic Act 7729 and Republic Act 7942. The ability of the DNR to negotiate terms on the government's behalf is only explicitly authorized by law for co-production and joint venture agreements. And finally, the most obvious area for improvement is that financial negotiations should be delegated to the tax authority and not the Resource Protection Agency. The DNR's technical expertise and experience is in resource management, not financial negotiation or tax policy. Absent the guidelines of a statute, its power to compel private parties to abide by certain terms and the expertise of the DOF, the government is at a weaker negotiating position in such agreements. In other words, we still need a fiscal regime for mining as a baseline for downside protection for whatever negotiation entered into by the government. Most relevantly for this forum, the proposed fiscal regime institutionalizes EITI, which currently exists in the country merely by executive creation. The EITI is our country's continuing commitment under the Philippine Open Government Partnership National Action Plan. EITI institutionalization is part of the legislative agenda for the fiscal sector under the Philippine Development Plan of the Duterte administration 2017 to 2022. The EITI is the only currently institutionalized under EU 147 series of 2013, but not with the force of a Republic Act. The proposed fiscal regime also introduces corporate governance structure. Ring fencing, for example, is a strong safeguard against tax avoidance. By preventing investors from obtaining a deduction against current income, governments speed up income tax collection. Only the force and effect of a tax law can institutionalize this arrangement. The fiscal regime also proposes the creation of a natural resource trust fund, not as big as Norway's oil fund. The DOF has expressed its reservation on this particular portion due to the one fund principle, but I am in the firm belief, however, that extractives are an exceptional industry and therefore merit an exception to this principle. We have to remember that mining has its externalities for which we have to pay, one way or another. If you don't set aside anything from the mining revenues for these externalities, the costs will find their way back home in some form, sometimes in tragedy. There has to be a dependable reserve of financial resources for timely rehabilitation of mines and for mining communities, especially when the private sector partner is remiss. The second reason is behavioral. When your mining revenues feed into short-term government collection, we may be tempted to over-extract in order to obtain more government revenues. Feeding the public spending machine and not balanced resource management could become the goal. At the peril of mining communities, instant gratification is the root of all tragedies. The third is cyclical. Commodities follow a boom and bust cycle. If there's no mechanism that captures value during high prices and sets it at the high, there's only suffering to be had during periods of depressed prices. If revenues could be captured during high prices and invested in some form as a safety reserve during periods of low prices, we insulate ourselves and the economy from this boom and bust cycle. The best international models for resource management tend to follow this direction. Norway, Scotland, even Saudi Arabia follow the model of using extractive revenue to diversify their economies and avoid the cyclicality of the commodity sector. The wildest success story in this area is Dubai, where oil now forms just 1% of the Emirates' GDP. Just one. Dubai oil is only 1% of the entire GDP of Dubai. We can't build an economy of extractives, but we certainly build a better economy out of its revenues. This is why a tax regime for the sector and a way of setting aside funds for rainy days is crucial. Allow me to end by emphasizing the promise of the mining sector and the oil sector. As the world shifts towards electric-powered transport and as the digital economy continues its ascent, the global economy will require more minerals, especially nickel and copper, which we abound in. Nickel prices are once again in 5-year highs. So is copper, so is cobalt, elements needed for e-vehicles batteries. Regardless of the grade of minerals we produce, demand is high across the board. It can only mean well for our mining industry's bottom lines in the medium term. Of course, that's not forever. Manufacturers will find ways to reduce metallic content when the metals get too expensive. When that happens, prices will inevitably fall. We must be ready. The tax regime is not everything, but it's a necessary step we cannot skip. I'm not against the mining industry itself, indeed. I have frequently touted it as a potential job creator post-pandemic. The value that we could create with the mineral price boom is too great to miss, especially in facing the economic scarring that may arise or that will be caused by protracted mobility restrictions, the hardest lockdowns in the whole world. But the opportunity would also be a great waste if we are unable to set revenues aside for the future. The tax revenues are also crucial for economic recovery. The proposed tax regime will generate 7.2 billion in incremental revenues on the first year. and 37.9 billion over the next 5 years. These are closed group estimates. They're very conservative. As more mining agreements are made and as mineral prices continue to boom, so these revenues will play an important role in helping stabilize our fiscal situation. I thank the Department of Finance for its leadership and support in this effort. And I thank the EITI for the opportunity to express my thoughts on this matter of great national importance. Thank you, and may everybody have a fruitful day ahead. Thank you very much, and maraming Diyos mabalo sa inyong gabos.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much, Representative Joey Salceda. It's always great to hear your insights, always clear, very coherent, and, full of wisdom. We're learning from Representative Salceda that it's actually possible to do responsible mining or extraction. And we were able to take some good anecdotes, through Norway, through the experience of Dubai, Scotland. And they were learning also that if our resources are actually managed properly, it can actually make us one of the richest countries in the world. But of course, it doesn't come without challenges. Right now, Representative Salceda is telling us that there is actually a lack of coherent fiscal mechanism. And this is where EITI comes into play, that it's important to institutionalize EITI, or the Extractives Industries Transparency Initiative. Now, he also mentioned that the terms of revenue sharing must be backed by law, and how it's important to have a fiscal regime for mining, and its potential are actually great. And right now, we are not able to maximize the revenues, but it comes with a lot of opportunities. It can make way for more jobs we can generate or help. It can actually help stabilize our fiscal situation, especially that we are trying to come out of the impact of this pandemic. Once again, thank you very much, Representative Salceda, for those wonderful insights. And thank you for giving us hope that it's actually possible to do responsible mining, or responsible extraction of resources. Once again, thank you. And of course, we would like to acknowledge all our viewers, all our participants over in Zoom. We now have more than 300 people joining us. Hello to you there. Thank you very much for sharing your time. Thank you very much for listening to our speakers. And I assure you, you are in store for many more insights coming your way. Now, moving forward, we will now hear about the star of this program. This is what I am talking about. This is the latest PH-EITI country report. The production of the country report is the second pillar of the EITI process, and the country report is PH-EITI's flagship product or service through which mining, oil, and gas transparency and accountability is operationalized. Since 2014, PH-EITI has been annually producing and publishing country reports that comprehensively disclose fiscal and financial data, as well as contextual information across the entire value chain of the extractive sector. This year's report is unique in a way that its production happened at a time of the pandemic. And so there were challenges encountered during the process. In addition, this report has special chapters that make it more timely and useful. To tell us more about the seventh PH-EITI country report and its key findings, we have with us the focal person of PH-EITI and chairperson of the Multi-Stakeholder Group, or MSG. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Finance Department Undersecretary Bayani H. Agabin. Please take it away, sir. Good morning.
Thank you, Tricia. Honorable Congressman Jose Maria Joey Salceda, my boss, Honorable Secretary Carlos Dominguez, fellow government officials and civil servants, esteemed members of the PH-EITI multi-stakeholder group, whom I miss very much seeing in person, partners from the industry and civil society, EITI International, USAID, World Bank, members of the media, guests, friends, ladies and gentlemen. A good morning to everyone. My task today is to share with you the key findings of the 7th EITI report. The seventh EITI report will contain the contextual information. I will just wait for the. Okay. It will contain the contextual information and financial data on the country's mining, oil, gas, and coal industries. It will contain as well, or it's a continuing commitment to implement the EITI, the global standard for extractive transparency and accountability. It was produced by a team of 4 consultants, including an independent administrator for the reconciliation of government, industry, and data. The team was led by attorney Brenda J. Angeles Mendoza, who also authored the contextual information chapter. The independent administrator, meanwhile, is Ms. Lynette Madeleine Chan, a certified public accountant. The seventh report covers the data and information from fiscal year 2019 and early 2020 for some components. And includes chapters on contextual information, reconciliation, industry outlook, thematic report on the social development and management program for mining communities. Unlike typical reporting processes, the preparation of this report happened at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, posing significant challenges in collecting and communicating relevant information for the country. For this segment of the program, let me present to you the data and information that you will find in the contextual information and reconciliation chapters. The contextual information chapter contains an overview of the extractive industries in the country, information on sectoral development, updates on legal and institutional framework, extractive sector's contribution to the economy, information about environmental funds, beneficial ownership, and gender-related data from the reporting companies. The contextual information chapter contains the legal, regulatory, and contractual frameworks, which essentially remain the same from the previous reporting period. There has not been any drastic change except for a few legislative and administrative measures that took effect within the period. For instance, the train law, which took effect in 2018, provides for the progressive increase of excise taxes for imported coal, coke, and petroleum products. New rates for 2019 had been implemented. SEC MC number 15 was issued in 2019, which mandated domestic corporations to disclose to the SEC their beneficial ownership information. For the mining sector, the ban on open pit remained effective throughout 2019 and was even further clarified through MGB's issuance of Memorandum Circular number 19-08. And for small-scale mining, RA 11256 was enacted in March of 2019, which exempted small-scale miners and accredited traders from income and excise taxes for the sale of gold to the BSP. During the early months of the pandemic, the MGB also issued several memorandum orders to guide mining projects in managing their operations and in dealing with the effects of COVID-19 and natural calamities. While already outside the scope of the contextual information, the contextual information chapter also noted the issuance of Executive Order number 130, series of 2021, which lifted the 9-year moratorium on new mineral agreements. And while the foregoing were being implemented, legislative proposals also abound in Congress for the passage of a new mining fiscal regime, as our keynote speaker earlier highlighted. For coal, oil, and gas, the policy direction can be drawn from official government pronouncements. For instance, the fourth State of the Nation address of President Duterte in 2019 The President stressed the urgency of ensuring the sustainability and availability of energy resources for the country. He directed the Department of Energy to hasten the development of renewable energy resources and reduce dependence on traditional energy sources like coal. In line with the foregoing, the Public Act 11285, which was enacted in 2019, um, promotes the implementation of energy efficiency and conservation plans, as well as the development and use of efficient renewable energy technologies and systems. Another policy was Executive Order number 30, series of 2017, that activated the Energy Investment Coordinating Council in streamlining regulatory procedures for the development of energy projects of national significance. Finally, the Memorandum of Understanding, which signed by the Philippines and China in 2018, which created a framework for cooperation on oil and gas exploration in West Philippine Sea. Officials of the two countries reportedly held their first meeting in Beijing, China, sometime in 2019, and an intergovernmental joint steering committee was convened to tackle, among others, the proposed areas for exploration and suggested sharing scheme. The seventh report's description of the relevant regulatory and legal updates provides context of the performance of the extractive sector for the period covered. Understanding these developments enables stakeholders to better appreciate the information presented in the report, specifically data related to production, export, economic contribution, and revenue collection. Overall, in 2019, 50 operating mines, 34 of which were producing gold, copper, chromite, and or nickel. 2 were suspended, and 13 were under care and maintenance. There were 54 non-metallic mines, 5 processing plants, and 3,389 small quarries and sand and gravel operations covered by LGU permits. Also, there were 15 newly approved registered mining exploration permits, 21 petroleum service contracts, 25 coal operating contracts, and 14 PCEP predetermined areas for offshore petroleum exploration and development. In terms of GDP, the seventh report notes that the contribution of mining, oil, gas, and coal was less than 1% or 0.6%. In terms of gross value added, gold and nickel, as the table will show you, were the top contributors in mining and quarrying industry group for 2019. Other contributors included stone, quarry, clay, and sand pits. The coverage of the reconciliation process, meanwhile, covered 40 metallic mining projects, 28 non-metallic mining projects, 2 oil and gas projects which involving 3 companies, 7 national agencies, and 60 local government units. These are the national agencies involved, and we'd like to thank all of them. Of course, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Department of Energy, Department of Budget and Management, Bureau of Treasury, the Bureau of Customs, and the Philippine Ports Authority. Next slide will show you the list of revenue streams covered by the 7th report for the mining sector. It's quite a lot, so I won't go through each of them, but you will see that in the report. Next slide shows the list of mandatory environmental and social expenditures which were included in the reconciliation process. These expenditures did not or do not go to the government as revenues. Instead, these payments go straight to the host and neighboring communities in the form of projects and programs for environmental protection, rehab, and social development. These are the list of revenue streams for oil and gas. And we reconciled revenues for mining, oil and gas for 2019 amounted to 56.7 billion pesos. It's lower by 14% from the previous report in 2018. The BIR in particular posted lower collections from oil and gas projects. And this is consistent with the gross value added for oil and gas that fell by 52.6% in the period. There were also challenges in the submission of supporting documents due to alternative work arrangements, and this affected our reconciliation process. Considering the challenges experienced, the overall variance after reconciliation went up from 0.1 in 2018 to 0.8 in 2019. This slide shows the revenue share per sector. And you will note that 61% or 56.7 billion pesos was contributed by the oil and gas sector, followed by metallic mining sector at 20% or 11.09 billion pesos, and the non-metallic mining sector at 19% or 11.05 billion pesos. This slide shows the revenue stream with the highest collections. For metallic and non-metallic mining, it's output VAT. Next is corporate income tax and excise tax on mineral products. The agency with the highest collection naturally is the BIR. Biggest contributors are limestone and nickel. For oil and gas, the highest revenue stream comes from the government share from the oil and gas production, with the DOE being the agency with the highest collection. In terms of LGU collections, there was a 14% decrease to 1.48 billion pesos. Reporting of LGU collections was mostly affected by the difficulty of projects to provide supporting documents. These are the highest LGU earners. Region 13 having earned 476 million pesos, followed by Region 2, which is Cagayan Valley, and Region 3, which is in Central Luzon. In Region 13, the biggest contributor was Taganito Mining, with around 126 million pesos of payments to the local government. It's followed by the 4 other companies, which you see on your screen. Reconciled revenues in metallic mining dipped by 8% from 11.66 billion in 2018 to 11.09 billion in 2019. BIR recorded the highest decrease of 675 million due to the general decline in collections. The non-metallic mining sector, meanwhile, recorded a 5% increase to 11.05 billion in terms of reconciled revenues. This was due to expanded coverage for the sector, which now included 28 projects in 2019 from 25 in 2018. And due to the increases in reconciled revenue from the Bureau of Customs and the BIR. Oil and gas sector's contribution to the government revenues in 2019 dropped to 35 billion pesos. This is 22% lower than the previous year, based on government reporting, specifically the BIR. In terms of mandatory environmental and social expenditures, the 7th report recorded a total expenditure of 4.3 billion pesos for 2019, which is 20% higher than the reconciled figure in 2018. As you will see from the slide, 91% of environmental and social expenditures are from the metallic mining sector, while the remaining 9% comes from the non-metallic mines. Um, these are the salient features of the seventh report, and the final report of the seventh, the final copy of the seventh report shall be available on the EITI website, which is flashed on your screen. In closing, I would like to thank our reporting entities, the companies and government agencies for your continuing commitment to EITI process even in the midst of pandemic. EITI reporting is a rigorous process for the last 8 years. You have all worked diligently with the PH-EI to pursue data transparency and greater accountability in the extractive sector. We hope you will be able to use this data and information in your research and advocacy activities. On behalf of the Department of Finance and the PH-EITI Multi-Stakeholder Group, I congratulate everyone for another successful EITI reporting cycle, and I wish everyone a successful day as well. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary Agapin. Well, it's good to know that there are actually moving forward. We're seeing some improvements. There are efforts in terms of the legislative and administrative measures, where Yusek Agapin actually noted that even the president stressed the importance of ensuring the sustainability of oil and energy resources. Now, in this PH-EITI report, we just note that it will actually provide context to the performance of extractives companies. And we're hearing from Yusek Agabin that we will be seeing here also the performance of extractives companies. It will show the contribution of mining, oil, and gas. And we're seeing there that it contributed 1% less to the GDP. And we have 56.7 billion pesos in reconciled revenues from mining, oil, and gas industries. But of course, he also takes note that the data collection was affected by some lacking submissions due to the alternative work from home setups. And like what you mentioned earlier, it actually came with challenges given the pandemic. It wasn't easy coming up with this report this time around. Well, we're also learning that the oil and gas contributes the biggest revenue share at more than 34 billion pesos. The biggest contributor to the revenue stream are the limestone and nickel. He also notes a decrease in LGU collections by 14% or 1.48 billion. And he takes note that the highest LGU earners are actually Region 13 and Region 2 and 3. We encourage our participants to send feedback or questions via Zoom's chat and Q&A function or through Facebook and YouTube's comment section. We will have time later to address those questions to our speakers. Now, like what was mentioned earlier, the seventh PH-EITI report has two special chapters that provide additional useful information on the extractive sector. These are the Industry Outlook chapter and the Thematic Outlook chapter and the report on the Social Development and Management Program. And to present to us the third chapter of the report, where some trends and prospects for the sector is described, we have here today the alternate focal person of the PH-EITI and alternate chair of the multi-stakeholder group, and the only rose among our set of speakers this morning. Let us hear from Department of Finance Assistant Secretary Maria Teresa Habitan. Good morning, ASEC Habitan.
Good morning, Tricia. Yeah, I'm a rose with plenty of thorns sometimes. So let me begin by acknowledging Your Honor, Congressman Joey Salceda, our boss, Secretary Carlos Dominguez, and Yusek Bayani Acabit, fellow government workers, our partners in the PH-EITI multi-stakeholder group, members of PICHA, guests, friends, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation focuses on the forward-looking element of the seventh PH-EITI report, the Industry Outlook chapter. The inclusion of this information in the EITI report was a response to pre-pandemic challenges in engaging an independent administrator for the reconciliation process. This will later be aggravated by financial constraints brought about by the ongoing global health crisis. To allow implementing countries flexibility and make EITI reports more timely and relevant, the EITI board authorized the production of unconventional reports that utilize readily accessible data to forecast an outlook for the local extractive sector, considering global economic conditions, price shocks, and the impact of the pandemic. To produce this chapter, the PH-EITI engaged an economist who utilized historical quantitative data in predicting a post-pandemic outlook for the sector. Future trends were largely based on available statistics as far back as the year 2000. A qualitative survey among EITI reporting companies was also implemented to complement analysis. Short-term prognoses are for a period of 3 to 4 years, or from 2020 to 2022 or 2023, whereas long-run forecasts are up to 8 years or until 2027. Historical data and surveys with companies suggest that the extractive sector in the Philippines is somewhat resilient to economic disturbances such as commodity price shocks. Majority of metallic and non-metallic mines that participated in the survey were able to handle commodity price shocks well in the past. Most of their bottom line, with a proportional increase in demand and profit targets, were still met by encountering sharp pricing changes with adjustments to selling price or volume, as well as by implementing a conservative approach to the hedging of export sales. In future instances, many of these mines would resort to cost cutting in order to adapt to any substantial increase or decrease in the price of metals over a short period of time. For oil, gas, and coal, any jump or collapse in the price of one commodity directly affects the others. Causes of the price shocks of these commodities in the past were either transitory or permanent. Data suggests that, in the long term, oil will have a tendency to exhibit lower prices, while coal will have higher prices. Future prospect of energy transition with domestic economies is being pushed by global forces to utilize lesser fossil fuels and more renewable sources of power, such as solar, wind, and water. Thus, the decline in demand for traditional energy sources will mean corresponding price increases. All other things being equal, the extractive industry in the Philippines is poised to grow in the long term at an annual rate of 10.3% from 2020. This will mainly be driven by the oil and gas sector's 20-year compounded annual growth rate of 26% on the back of the Philippines' relatively slow transition to decarbonization. The non-metallic mining sector's compounded growth rate of 10% per year is also a major contributor to the industry's expansion over 7 years. The contribution of the coal and metallic mining sectors is single digit at 9.7 and 7.7% respectively, but significant nonetheless, with the production of coal and metals steadily growing. However, the projected growth rates of the extractive industry and its sectors were stymied by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. There was a huge slump in consumer demand and a consequent slowdown of the global economy. All sectors of the local extractives contracted to an average of 16%. Primary exports of major commodities fell, such as gold by 11% and copper concentrates by 78% between January to July of 2019 and 2020. The same thing happened with select secondary products, namely non-metallic mineral manufacturers by 19%, as well as iron and steel by 71%. The non-metallic mines were the most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Almost all of those that responded to the survey said that their volume of production plummeted by around 50%, and more than half of them experienced a reduction in their sales, and more than half of them say in their sales by about the same proportion. This via 3 out of 4 metallic mining company respondents saying that they suffered little or no impact on both their output and revenues. The metallic mining sector, therefore, is relatively resilient to extreme conditions such as COVID-19, a precursor for the sector to also take on other long-term risks in the future. Despite its negative impacts, the pandemic offered a few silver linings for the extractives. One, the lifting of the suspension of mining contracts was fast-tracked at the height of the community quarantine to help jumpstart the pandemic-battered economy. Two, the DTI issued Memorandum Circular 20-2022 that included the oil, gas, coal, and mining sectors in the list of establishments deemed essential and hence were allowed to continue operations even under ECQ. Pandemic-induced lockdowns restrict economic activity as the supply of certain goods and services tightened, coupled with slumps in demand. Scientists reckon that the world may be living with COVID-19 for years, but this does not mean that we have to be living in quarantine with it. With the right interplay of timely introduction of vaccines and the proper implementation of minimum health protocols, people can have their day-to-day lives a little back to normal. As such, for the extractive sector, the government has initiated measures to maximize the industry's potential to propel the economy and reset the growth trajectory of the extractives back to positive territory. Executive Order Number 130, that lifted the 9-year-old moratorium on new mining projects, is expected to boost mineral production by around 15 billion pesos more every year until 2023, and up to an additional 43 billion pesos annually until 2027. Potential new entrants will increase exports by 1 to 2 billion US dollar every year in the short and long terms, as well as employ as many as 1.3 times more workers. With 100 more players in the market for mines, the government can collect an additional 34 billion pesos in taxes and fees. Moreover, the passage of the new tax regime and the implementation of the CREATE Act that reduced the corporate income tax from 30 to 25% will allow companies to reinvest savings towards further expansion. Economic developments are also beneficial for metallic mines in terms of export revenues, as the importation needs of Hong Kong, China, and Japan will drive greater demand for extractive commodities from the Philippines. The global post-COVID-19 recovery is pushing the need for higher gold purchases as a liquid resource and an investment safeguard against another possible pandemic. The worldwide trend of utilizing electric vehicles over conventional ones is focusing market attention on nickel as an essential component of rechargeable batteries. As such, both gold and nickel can contribute a conservative maximum of 21 billion US dollars in foreign exchange earnings for the country. In terms of electricity generation, the country has yet to maximize renewable sources of energy. In fact, the share of renewables in the power generation mix hit a trough of 21% in 2019, which was significantly lower than in 2008, when they accounted for less than 40%. In short, Filipinos will continue to be dependent on fossil fuels in this regard for many years to come. With regard to secondary carbon emissions, the promotion of electric, if not hybrid vehicles, has started to gain ground in developed countries. In the Philippines, however, the majority of the buyers are not yet convinced to purchase them over conventional cars. Philippine transportation will continue to rely on fossil fuels, so the outlook is still bright for the oil and gas sectors. In the longer term, as the demand for electric vehicles rises, so will the need for nickel as a main component of their batteries. Given that the country is a top 2 producer of this metallic mineral in 2019 after Indonesia, the domestic consumption of and export demand for nickel will continue to benefit the metal sector in the many years to come. Truly, the natural resources of a country can drive its growth, so the extractives is among the main economic drivers in many countries. The Philippines has yet to fully maximize its potential. To do this, the sector should take advantage of its strengths, namely significant contribution to GVA, specifically the metallic mines, a steady growth of exports, proper handling of commodity price shocks, pricing of non-metallic commodities that is independent of the global market, consistent generation of employment opportunities, openness to adopting the necessary changes brought about by extreme events, keenness of mining sector on automation, and a degree of optimism that the overall business environment will get better post-pandemic. In terms of opportunities, the industry's GDP share is only hovering around 1%, so there is still much room to contribute to it. The same thing goes with its exports to major destinations. Many factors in and out of the Philippines that have been at play can affect the future trajectories of extractives in general and its sectors in particular. Historical gains from the year 2000 were reversed in 2020 with the onset of COVID-19. But quantitative data shows that companies are recovering quickly and steadily. Qualitative information is also suggestive of optimistic perspectives. On top of some favorable government legislation and opportune changes in the global economy, the environment is ripe for recent losses to be recouped and pre-pandemic growth to resume, if not expand much more post-pandemic. That's the current outlook for the extractive industries. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Asik Habitan, for that wonderful outlook. Well, it's just to summarize a bit of the information we got from Asik Habitan. Well, we are learning that oil will have a tendency to have lower prices, while coal will tend to have higher prices in the future. And we're seeing a decline in demand for traditional energy sources. This means it will also have an impact on the prices of these resources. The extractive industry in the Philippines is actually poised to grow in the long term at an annual rate of 10.3% from 2020. Although we're seeing these great perspectives, undoubtedly COVID-19 had a significant impact on the extractives industry. But it wasn't all bad, according to Asik Habitan. It also provided some silver lining through the lifting of the mining contract suspension, and the government still allowed operation of mining despite the lockdowns. Well, we're also seeing the lifting of the moratorium on new mining contracts is expected to boost 15 billion pesos more every year until 2023 and additional 43 billion annually until 2027. Now, this only means more jobs, more revenues, and in terms of outlook, there's going to be a high demand for electric vehicles, high demand for batteries, which also means high demand for nickels. So, as a kapitan only means that there will still be high demand for fossil fuels. So the outlook is still very bright. Now it's up for the sector to actually take advantage of its strength. And it's good to note that companies are actually recovering well despite the pandemic. Again, thank you very much, Asik Habitan, for that Outlook presentation. We are down to the final chapter of the seventh report. And this time, we'll introduce you to a thematic report on social development and management program, a mandatory expenditure for mining companies. And to explain to us why this chapter was included in this year's report and present an overview of the chapter, here with us is one of our MSG industry representatives, the Executive Director of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, let us lend our ears to Attorney Ronald Rex Residoro. Take it away, sir.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am excited to share with you the highlights of the final chapter of the seventh report. This chapter is a report and assessment of the Social Development and Management Program, or SDMP, of mining companies. A program close to miners' hearts because SDMP is our most significant and direct contribution to sustainable development in our host and neighboring communities. In March 2020, the MGB issued a memorandum authorizing mining companies to realign their unexpended SDMP funds for COVID-19. Keen on monitoring how these realignments will be utilized, the MSG agreed to include a thematic report on SDMP as one chapter of the seventh report. Prior to this, the EITI board had authorized a flexible approach in EITI reporting. This flexible approach is prescribed to have forward-looking elements and any other information that the MSG deems relevant and useful in the context of the implementing country and considering current circumstances. Now, not wanting to limit the report to a mere monitoring of realigned SDMP funds, the MSG further agreed to produce a report that assesses the effectiveness and efficacy of the SDMP as a development mechanism and a sustainability tool for communities that host mining operations. As a background, mining companies are required under the DENR Administrative Order 2010-21 to create special funds to implement social development and environmental management programs. These funds are separate from the taxes, fees, and royalties that mining companies are mandated to pay to government. In essence, these funds, specifically the SDMP fund, aims to contribute to the development of the host and neighboring communities affected by mining activities, and the advancement of mining technology and geosciences, as well as the promotion of the general welfare. A mining company's budget for SDMP must be at least equivalent to an annual allocation of 1.5% of the company's annual operating cost. 75% of this amount must be allocated for the development of the host and neighboring communities. 10% of the development of that, 10% for the development of mining technology and geosciences, and 15% for the implementation of information, education, and communication programs. These social expenditures are not payments made directly to government, but are projects and programs directly implemented by mining companies. The law requires companies to develop the social development program in consultation and in partnership with host and neighboring communities affected by mining activities. Now, the report on SDMP in the seventh report includes the following components. One, an analysis of mining companies' 2019 data on SDMP, including information on COVID-19 realignments. These data and information were collected through the EITI online reporting in the extractives or OR tool. Secondly, an analysis of data and information collected from 3 case studies where there are mining operations. 2 older mine sites were also included to have a comparison of SDMP projects by mature mines and newer mines. The case study areas included in the mining areas of the following companies: Republic Cement, Atlas, Taganito, Philex, and Oceana Gold. In lieu of in-person FGDs that cannot be implemented due to the pandemic, the consultant for the report administered survey forms to company personnel, members of the community, and officials of the LGU where mining operations were located. The SDMPs of more mature projects were used as comparison to highlight best practices. Some of the observed positive practices in the SDMP of Philex and Oceana Gold Philippines are the following. 1, involvement of the community leaders, members in planning and execution of projects developed a sense of ownership and accountability. Secondly, capacity building and empowerment as part of sustainability measures for SDMP projects boosted the trust and confidence of community members to manage the project. And third, participation of other stakeholders such as LGUs, national government agencies, and other organizations harmonized with the local development agenda and prevented duplication of efforts. In 2019, Philex Mining Corporation spent 95 million pesos for SDMP through their health, education, livelihood, public infrastructure, and socio-cultural program, or HELPS. Specific education needs of the host and neighboring communities that Philex are targeting for their SDMP activities include scholarships, providing seed capital and technical assistance to host and neighboring communities, livelihood and skills development training and seminars. Meanwhile, Oceana Gold Philippines worked on programs targeting education, environment, health, business development, training, and infrastructure. This included livelihood projects for co-ops and individual farms as part of enterprise development and networking programs, educational programs such as scholarships, and access to healthcare services. Now, an SDMP has a 5-year budgetary life cycle and is continuously budgeted and undertaken depending on the life of the mine. Thus, the 5-year budgetary requirement of the program is based on the company's forecast of operating expenses during the said period, which is reviewed and approved by the MGB regional office. Any unspent amount or savings for a given year allotted for SDMP implementation may be added to the succeeding year's allotment and may be reprogrammed after consultation with host and neighboring communities. Now, in line with this policy that unspent funds for SDMP may be realigned for other purposes, the MGB issued a memorandum to realign unutilized SDMP funds to support COVID-19 response. The guidelines on the realignment of these funds were released on April 1, 2020. The unutilized SDMP fund pertains to the 2019 total unspent budget, which was carried over to the 2020 annual SDMP budget. This should be utilized first prior to the utilization of the 2020 SDMP fund. Now, based on the data submitted by 39 mining companies, the metallic mining industry has relocated around 182.2 million, while the utilized budget is around 176.3 million. The metallic mining companies were able to help 192,000 individuals, including frontliners, and 436,000 households and families, even higher than the original target of beneficiaries. Region 13, or Caraga, received the largest COVID-19 support from metallic mines at 68.6 million, which constituted 39% of the total utilized budget by metallic mines. Now, among the types of support given to beneficiaries were food assistance, such as food packs, rice, and other relief goods. For the non-metallic sector, 27 companies reported on their SDMP realignments. The total allocated budget disclosed by the reporting non-metallic mines amounted to about 21.3 million, but the total actual expenditure reached over 55 million. Non-metallic mining companies were able to serve at least 155,000 frontliners and individuals, as well as around 260,000 households and families. In Region 3, or Central Luzon specifically, the provinces of Bulacan and Pampanga received the largest COVID-19 assistance from non-metallic mining companies. Non-metallic mining companies also provided different kinds of support to communities. 16 of the reporting non-metallic mines provided food assistance, while 11 delivered medical supplies. Now, while not mandated to allocate funds for social development and management, oil and gas companies also reported a total of 2 billion allotted for COVID-19. In compliance with RA 11469, or the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, the PNOC Exploration Corporation remitted about 2 billion pesos worth of dividends to the Bureau of Treasury to help fund the government's COVID-19 response. Shell Philippines Exploration BV, on the other hand, spent about 7.2 million to support a total of 21,000 frontline workers and individuals and 1,864 households and families. Now, in total, the oil, gas, and mining sectors, including both metallic and non-metallic mining companies, allocated a total COVID response fund of 2.2 billion pesos. The SDMP chapter of the 7th report is still subject to finalization and MSG approval, but analysis suggests that the implementation of the SDMP supports and creates significant changes in the lives of beneficiaries. Nevertheless, there is still a need to rethink SDMP as a policy to attain more inclusivity, sustainability, and resiliency. Now, in terms of inclusivity, participation among community members is a component of successful implementation of SDMP projects. Notably, mining companies with strong SDMP implementation derive success from the participation of key community members. Participation also results in better accountability of community members for the project. There should also be more active participation among other stakeholders. Evident with the experience of the case study areas, participation of other key stakeholders, such as local government units, national government agencies, and other organizations, are important in bringing these changes to the community, creating a bigger impact not only uh, on the community. Consistent with stakeholder participation, local government units are best involved through the development and use of SDMP monitoring tools, such that project initiatives can also be aligned with other development agendas of the local government unit. This will help prevent duplication of efforts and distribute programs to other communities that really need attention. On sustainability, in tackling the issue of dependency of communities to mining companies, participation and accountability of stakeholders are important considerations. Participation and accountability of the community to SDMP projects as part of SDMP allow for a more strategic perspective in project implementation. This will also require coordination and monitoring of SDMP projects by multiple stakeholders other than the MGB and mining companies. SDMP projects should be reflected in the local development agenda of beneficiary municipalities. On the other hand, identification of projects or initiatives should also consider the development agenda of the locality, as well as the needs of the beneficiary and neighboring communities. That being said, capacity building and empowerment of the community should be prioritized as part of the sustainability measures of SDMP projects. While we long for participation of other stakeholders, it is important that participation and accountability of projects by the community themselves should be the priority. Thus, they need to build more capacity in community development. On resiliency, as we gear for more resilient communities, there is need to consider disasters and other emergencies in crafting community initiatives. Following the administrative orders to respond to disasters and health emergencies, implementation of community development projects should adopt a more proactive perspective in dealing with disasters and health emergencies. SDMP projects can also adopt the framework for disaster risk reduction and management, such as disaster prevention and mitigation, disaster preparedness, disaster response, and disaster rehabilitation and recovery in designing project initiatives. If you want to be more explicit about this action, policy changes should be made to ensure that there is a designated allocation or incentives for SDMP projects that consider this framework. This framework is being adopted by the national government through the NDRRMP 2011 to 2018. Though this plan is designed for national agencies, mining companies can adopt this framework in dealing with their beneficiary communities to gear towards resiliency. COVID-19 can be considered as a health hazard and can also be tackled in the same framework as a disaster, although on a different level. The final copy of the SMP chapter, the complete 7th report, will be accessible to you at the PH-EITI website. That completes my report for this morning. I hope you found it informative and useful. Thank you and have a good morning.
Thank you very much, Attorney Ron. Yes, that was very informative and resourceful. So we're learning some highlights, that it's capacity building and empowerment of community should be prioritized as part of sustainability measures. Attorney Ron also highlighted the importance of involving the community, and we're seeing the gains of that. Like, for example, the in the case of Felix, where they prioritized or they focused on health, education, livelihood, public infrastructure, and social cultural programs. And we also have, as an example, the case of Oceana, which had a program on education, health, environment, business development, and where they provided livelihood programs for the community, networking programs, and education programs. But we're seeing that, with these initiatives, they're fostering inclusivity, they're involving the community, and that's why it's reaping really good benefits. We also learned from Attorney Ron that there is a 5-year budgetary program that is based on the company's forecast, and the unspent amount may be realigned or added to next year's funds. And that's what we actually saw for the COVID 19 pandemic. The unused SDMP funds supported a lot of COVID 19 programs, like for example, through the metallic collections, we have supported over 192,000 beneficiaries. Those are just individuals, and it also supported over 400,000 families. For non-metallic, we were able to help over 155,000 individuals and 260,000 families. So just look at that. The funds, the SDMP funds, have been helping a lot of families, a lot of people navigate their way through this pandemic. And just to give you a summary, the total budget that was actually realigned for COVID 19 response from the mining and oil and gas industries amounted to 2.2 billion pesos. That's just for COVID 19 response, helping a lot of families, helping a lot of individuals. But despite this, Attorney Ron actually noted that we still need more active participation among our stakeholders. I hope these benefits, these fruits of the SDMP funds, encourage our stakeholders who are with us right now to participate more actively in this. And because we're seeing that participation results in better accountability of community members. Attorney Ron also focused on resilience, where he noted that we must be more proactive in dealing with disasters, and projects may actually adopt the framework for disaster risk reduction. Well, COVID 19 can also be considered a health disaster, which most of us were caught unprepared. But again, taking away from ASIC Habitat, it's good to note that some companies are already recovering well, we're learning a lot from this, and I'm sure most of you would want to take a deeper look into the data that were shown in the presentations of our speakers. So, with that, all our presentations will soon be available at the PH-EITI website, and the highlights of proceedings will also be available in Ilocano and Cebuano. Once again, thank you very much, Attorney Ron. And I hope our viewers, you guys are learning a lot so far in this virtual conference. If you have any questions or comments on the presentation, we encourage you to send in your message. Again, for our viewers on Zoom, you may type in your message in the Q&A function or via chat box. And those of you who are watching us on Facebook and YouTube, you may send your questions via the comments section. Feel free to communicate with us through your native language. That whether you're Cebuano, Ilocano, you're welcome to send in your question in your preferred language or your dialect. We would like to acknowledge some of our viewers as well. Hello to Celine Rebullante of MGB Mimaropa, who says she's watching on field in Palawan. Hello to you, ma'am. We also have Ryan Dave Raila, who is also joining us while attending from Cebu. Wow, great to know that we have a lot of participants from different parts of the country. And again, we hope you're learning from this, and we hope it gives you the hope that it's possible to do responsible mining, it's possible to do responsible extraction, and that in the future, this will reap you good benefits. We would like to invite our viewers at this point to join us on Slido, where we can interact with each other through quick polls and quizzes. To join, just log on to www.slido.com. That's SLIDO.com, and join in as participant by typing the code NotCon2021. You may also scan the QR code. You'll see that flashed on your screens right now. And for now, we will be taking a very quick break. And after the break, we will have some icebreakers with you via Slido, so be ready. Hope you enjoy your break. See you in a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you were able to do the things you needed to do in that very short break. Well, as promised a while ago, we will have some icebreakers via Slido. For those who are not yet with us on Slido, you may join by logging on to www.slido.com. That's SLIDO.com. And join in as a participant by typing the code NotCon2021. That's again, the instructions are also flashed on your screens. We have there the QR code, and you will see there the code that you need to enter in as you join as a participant in slido.com. We are going to have some sort of a pop quiz. And so I hope that we paid attention to our wonderful presentations earlier. We will wait a few seconds to allow more people to come in and join our activity. There we're seeing a lot of people joining in. And there you go. We see the first question for you. From the contextual information, let me read out for you. How much is the total reconciled revenues from the mining, oil, and gas industries from fiscal year 2019? Again, how much is the total reconciled revenues from the mining, oil, and gas industries for fiscal year 2019? Type in your answers as fast as you can, okay? The question again is from the contextual information, and your choices are A, 64.3 billion pesos, B, 65.4 billion pesos, and C, 56.7 billion pesos. Type in your answers. All right. Send in your answers. Okay, as of now, we're seeing 31% answered letter A. And then for 65.4 billion, letter B, we have 18% of respondents. And for letter C, we got the most number of responses, 51% for 56.7 billion. And the correct answer is letter C, 56.7 billion pesos. Good job to those who got the correct answer. Let's move on to our next question. It is from the Industry Outlook. This is a true or false question. The metallic mines were the most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, the metallic mines were the most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. True or false? Well, we got three options for you. There's true, false, and letter C, less than we expected. Okay, send in your answers. Again, the question is the metallic mines were the most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Is this true or false or less than we expected? All right. Are you sure with your answers? We're now gonna be flashing to you the number of responses. For true, 29%, and 56% said it's false. And the correct answer, of course, is false. The non-metallic mines were the most affected by the COVID-19. And almost all of those that responded to the survey said that their volume of production plummeted by around 50%, and more than half of them experienced a reduction in their sales by about the same proportion. This is vis-a-vis 3 out of 4 metallic mining company respondents saying that they have suffered little or no impact on both of their output and revenues. The metallic mining sector, therefore, is relatively resilient to extreme conditions such as COVID-19, a precursor for the sector to also take on other long-term risks in the future. Again, good job to those who got the correct answers. On our third question, it is from the Social Management Development Program. Give one of the components for a successful implementation of SDMP. Again, give one of the components for a successful implementation of the SDMP. Oh, I think we have a different question for this one. We have another question from the Social Management Development Program, and it reads: in compliance with RA 11469 or the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, only the metallic and non metallic industries are required to realign budget for COVID 19. Is it true or false? Sorry for the confusion, but that's the final question from our end. Again, from the Social Management Development Program, in compliance with RA 11469 or the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, only the metallic and non metallic industries are required to realign budget for COVID 19. That was discussed by Attorney Ron towards the latter part of his presentation. 35% said it's true that only non-metallic and metallic industries are required to realign budget for COVID-19, while 65% answered false. And the correct answer is false. Kudos to those who got the correct answer once again. I think that ends our quiz, our very quick question and answer. Thank you very much for everyone who joined us in that quick activity. We'll try to have more of those later. I'm sure you enjoyed it. And it's great to know that a lot of you are really learning from this conference. Now let's proceed with our program. The next set of presenters will introduce to us new tools and initiatives that makes extractives data more publicly accessible. Some of these initiatives were even developed through years of consultations and follow-ups. And we are happy that the EITI process, in one way or another, has helped push these initiatives to materialize. And one of the recurring issues in previous stakeholder engagement activities of the PH-EITI was the lack of access to timely data and local government shares in national wealth. And so, to finally address this concern, our next speaker for this morning will discuss a new portal of the Department of Budget and Management where extractive stakeholders, especially our partners in the LGUs, can monitor their computation and release of their shares in national wealth. To present the National Wealth Shares portal, here with us is the Chief Budget Management Specialist of the Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, Mr. Rainier Diaz. Please take it away, Mr. Rainier.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you, Trisha, for this opportunity to discuss our new online portal for national wealth. So today, on behalf of Director Makaspak, I'm very excited to share the National Wealth Online Portal as part of the increasing transparency in our fund releasing process. We saw the need for this portal due to numerous requests received by our department as to the amount received by the beneficiary LGUs and their stakeholders. So as an outline of our presentation for today, it's broken into two parts: a quick introduction to discuss the LGU shares in National Wealth and the National Wealth Online Portal. So as an introduction, the local government's unit share in National Wealth, this is the share or financial support by the national government to the LGUs and is equivalent to about 40% of the gross collections derived by the national government from the utilization and development of national wealth from the preceding fiscal year. So this is a part of our local government code, or LGC RA number 7160, and it's located at section 289 and 290. Moreover, at the same document, we will see the uses of the fund, which include the LGU share from the proceeds of the national wealth shall only be used to finance local development and livelihood projects of the recipient LGUs. Moreover, in cases wherein the proceeds are derived from the development and utilization of hydrothermal, geothermal, and other sources of energy, 80% of which shall be used solely to lower the cost of electricity in the LGU where such source of energy is located. So we get the information with our four partner agencies. These are from the DNR OSEC for the forest charges. Meanwhile, for royalties from mineral reservations, we get it from the DNR MGB or Mines and Geosciences Bureau. Next is the energy production sources is derived from the DOE. Meanwhile, for the mining taxes, it is submitted to us by the BIR. So now we go on to the National Wealth Online Portal. So the National Wealth Online Portal may also be accessed via this hyperlink, our DBM website, and then you'll just type in this hyperlink. Or you can go in our website, dbm.gov.ph, and then you just click DBM releases, then shares in utilization and development of national wealth. Afterwards, you will be brought to a landing page wherein you can see some sources that you can look into, an introduction of the national wealth. And for other details of the national wealth, it includes the following information. You can see a breakdown by resource type, like mining, energy, forest charges, and royalties. Then by location or region by provinces, and even up to the barangay level. And then the name of the companies or payees that remitted their shares in national taxes. Then you can also look upon a presentation or graphical presentation of the data. So if you click on these three lines, you can now go into this portion. Then a drop-down portion shall be seen. Then click on resource or type. Afterwards, you will see a tabular form of information. As you can see, it's broken into several portions that our stakeholders can browse upon. This includes the type of national wealth, the collection quarter, and the collection year. The actual collections was made. And then the specific region, province, city, municipality, and barangays. Also included, as you can see, is the name of the payees. And then the amount collected, the total amount collected, and the 40% share of the LGUs, and the breakdown per specific LGU. Moreover, as you can see in the rightmost part, the three columns shows the year wherein these fund sources were charged against, the appropriations like the GAA or General Appropriations Act and the continuing appropriations, as the case may be, and when this was submitted to us by the collecting agencies, the requirements for the fund release. Moreover, you can drill down the information if you're just want to see a specific type of national wealth. You can browse it in the national wealth column or drop down list. And then the type also includes a specific sub-portion for the energy sector. The next portion of the National Wealth Online Portal also includes the drill down for the location. This includes the same information, but you can now drill down by region, province, municipality, or city and barangay level. And
Of Mr. Rainier Diaz. We'll try to have him back on our air in a while. But again, that was a very useful national wealth portal that should be able to help our stakeholders to see their shares, to see, as okay, there
United
we have Mr. Diaz back on the line. All right. Please take it away once again, Sir Rainier.
Oh, sorry. I was cut off. Miss Trish, can I know where, in what slide I was cut off?
This one where you were showing the regions, the drill down by regions, where
Drill
the
down.
stakeholders, yes, can view the breakdown by regions.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. So you can see that you can look upon by region, by province, city, municipality, or by barangay. And even you can search if you're just want to search a specific LGU, you can do so. And afterwards, you can click on the rightmost portion, the blue one, if you can see on that, and you can download an Excel editable file. So if you're doing research, you don't have to retype everything that it's in the online portal. It's downloadable. Next portion is the company or by payee. So if we click on that, you can also see the same type of information, but now you can drill down by the companies or the payees specifically for your LGU or stakeholders. Also, it's all again searchable. If you're just want to search or key in specific words, if you do not know the whole name of the company, but you know some portions of that, like for this portion, if you want to search United Madaya Tribal, but you didn't input everything, you can search on that. And again, all of these are downloadable. So for that, that ends my presentation for today. It's just a quick overview of the portal. And I hope our stakeholders can benefit in this reform and our participants can ask further questions later on in the Q&A. Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rainier, for that very informative and very useful national wealth portal. As we were talking about earlier, a lot of stakeholders really mentioned that this is one of their concerns. They wanted to have an access to timely data and to on local government shares in the national wealth. So I hope that addresses the concerns of our stakeholders. Very easy to use as well. Again, thank you very much, Sir Rainier. Our next speaker will now discuss the mainstreaming action plan. He is a national coordinator of Bantay Kita, Publish What You Pay Philippines, Mr. Vincent Lazadin. The floor is yours, Mr. Vincent.
Thank you, Tricia, and good morning. My task this morning is to present mainstreaming for the EITI. So I'll try to make it quick and painless for everyone. So the outline for the presentation, first I'll present a quick background on mainstreaming. We'll talk about defining systematic disclosure. Third, we'll talk about some of the strategies and approaches that we've identified for mainstreaming EITI. We'll talk about some key result areas, and we'll touch a little on the proposed 3-year action plan for mainstreaming EITI disclosure. So let's begin with a quick background on the mainstreaming action plan. The Philippines, when the Philippines became a member of the EITI, it committed to disclose information along the whole extractive industry value chain, from how extraction rights are awarded to how revenues make their way through the government and how or if they benefit the public and contribute to the economy. As part of its commitment as an EITI implementing country, the Philippines is required to publish an annual report that discloses information on contracts and licenses, production, revenue collection, revenue allocation, and social and economic spending. So far, most of the information required by the EITI standard rather, to be disclosed, has been collected and made public through the EITI annual reports. Undersecretary Agabian shared with us earlier a summary of the contents of the latest 7th report. At a meeting of the EITI International Board, they agreed to a set of recommendations regarding systematic disclosure. The board said in 2018, in part, that by end 2018, all implementing countries are expected to develop a costed work plan for 2019 and onwards that includes steps to mainstream EITI implementation in company and government systems within 5 years, with the scope to seek a longer transitional period where needed. This was in recognition of the need to make transparency and disclosure in the extractive industries a regular and normal way of doing business. It is expected that over the years, implementing countries will make increasingly more information available through systematic and regular disclosures. In response to this set of recommendations, the Philippine EITI undertook a series of activities to determine the feasibility of mainstreaming disclosure. A feasibility study, composed of 2 phases, was undertaken with the overall aim of informing Philippines EITI and EITI implementing agencies on how EITI can be routinely and systematically disclosed. The first phase involved the development of a work plan, methodology, an outline of the study, stakeholder consultations, and an initial draft. The second phase resulted in the creation of a mainstreaming roadmap, including detailed action steps and the finalization of the feasibility study. The first phase of the mainstreaming feasibility study was completed and is now published on the PH-EITI website. The initial findings of the study recommended that the MSG and implementing agencies agree on clear objectives and approach to mainstreaming, develop a mainstreaming roadmap, enact and implement enabling policies, utilize existing online platforms of PH-EITI, and identify actions within a specific time frame in order to effectively mainstream PH-EITI data. A series of mainstreaming workshops with various stakeholders was thereafter arranged for this purpose. With the assistance of the PH-EITI, the consultant for the mainstreaming feasibility study facilitated a consultation session with implementing agencies in order to finalize the feasibility report and develop a mainstreaming action plan. A significant number of MSG members participated, and around 70 representatives from over 15 government agencies attended the activity. A special session was subsequently held for members of the extractive industries, with 80 representatives from 25 metallic and 16 non-metallic mining companies in attendance. A separate consultation was held with the PH-EITI Secretariat and with civil society organizations was likewise held. Some of the emerging insights that were drawn from the consultation sessions were considered in drafting the action plan. These include the redefinition of systematic disclosure or the adaptation of EITI mainstreaming in the context of the Philippines, the continued relevance of reconciliation, at least in the interim and in particular data sets, the significance of a schematic design or some form of visualization to better help communicate how systematic disclosure will look like, the combination of centralized and decentralized disclosures as the country's model of mainstreaming, at least in the interim, to facilitate efficient aggregation of data for analysis, and redefining the role of the MSG and the Secretariat under PH-EITI mainstreaming. Next, we'll go on to defining what exactly systematic disclosure really means. According to the EITI guidance, systematic disclosure means that EITI's disclosure requirements are met through routine and publicly available company and government reporting. This could include enabling access to EITI data through public financial reporting, annual company or government agency reports, information portals, and other open data and freedom of information initiatives. A key concern will be ensuring that the public data is comprehensive and reliable. This should include an explanation of the underlying audit and assurance procedures that the data has been subject to, with public access to the supporting documentation. Mainstreaming refers to the process for realizing this goal, which may include interim measures, pilots, and other capacity building activities. This means that disclosing data at source through government and corporate databases, online registries, websites, and/or portals that provide citizens and stakeholders with accessible and timely information on the extractive sector. Why systematic disclosure? By making EITI data publicly available, EITI reporting becomes simpler and more cost-effective. It enables stakeholders to focus on using and analyzing data rather than on collecting data. For companies, disclosing data at source helps them build trust by improving their social license to operate and supports the creation of a level playing field for business. Publishing data regularly and accessibly can help set the right expectations with communities and citizens on the extractive operations in their country or region. However, for the Philippines, mainstreaming or systematic disclosure does not end in providing the necessary systems to effectively collect and share EITI data. More important is building the capacity of stakeholders, especially communities affected by the extractive industries, to understand and utilize these data to provide natural resource governance through policy interventions at both the national and local levels. In more concrete terms, systematic disclosure for the Philippines means that implementing agencies and companies have the following: a designated personnel who understands what EITI data needs to be collected and ensures periodic data collection, procedures and systems that are in place to efficiently collect relevant data from various sources within and outside the agency and/or company, an electronic database in place to organize the collection of EITI data to ease data management, and lastly, an online public portal to disclose EITI data in open data formats that are easily accessible and understood. So what are some of the mainstreaming strategies and approaches that have been identified? The mainstreaming, or the systematic disclosure of extractives data in the next 3 years, is therefore governed by the following Philippine EITI strategies and approaches. First is partnership and collaboration. The action plan supports an open and inclusive process, a tool to engage various stakeholders to come together to find solutions to address specific issues. The plan will provide opportunities for stakeholders to work together to address complex issues that require better coordination among multiple stakeholders, improve performance in order to achieve common goals and greater results. A holistic approach. The action plan places emphasis on the functional relationships among the parts and the whole or overall framework of systematic disclosure. Instead of thinking about each element by itself, each key result area of the action plan is envisioned in the overall context of systematic disclosure. An enabling policy environment. Through the action plan seeks to strengthen the creation of an enabling environment that is needed to facilitate the smooth implementation of systematic disclosure in the extractive sector. The enabling environment is determined by national, provincial, and local policies and legislation that constitute the rules of the game and facilitates all stakeholders to play their respective roles in the disclosure and management of EITI data. The purpose of such enabling environment is to provide a set of solid foundations that enables the priorities and best ways which can help pave the way for systematic disclosure of EITI data. Next is institutional strengthening of capacities. The action plan provides training and learning as an integral part of a comprehensive program addressing capacity issues. Capacity development intervention focuses not only on disclosure of data, but will put emphasis on building capacities, on the utilization of these data to improve natural resource governance, and ensure sustainable development for affected communities. Next is tracking of progress through results-based monitoring, evaluation, and learning. The action plan employs a results-based approach to tracking the results and performance based on a transparent and reflective logical and results framework approach, and to measure impact through evaluation. The implementation of the action plan commits to monitoring and evaluating the success of its efforts in managing the systemic disclosure of EITI data to deliver expected outputs and meet intended outcomes and impact. Recognizing success and learning from it, as well as identifying areas for improvement to address gaps, are key steps to ensure the effective implementation of the action plan. And lastly is the incremental achievement of systematic disclosure. The plan supports the incremental achievement of systematic disclosure that employs an iterative and cumulative development approach to achieve the objective of full systematic disclosure as envisioned by the EITI. This means that outputs and outcomes will serve as the building blocks to achieve full systematic disclosure of data with due consideration on the existing country context and based on mutually agreed pace and phases. To operationalize the approaches and strategies identified above, the action plan has 4 key result areas or program components to include: 1. Enhanced analysis and advocacy. 2. Increased collaborative partnerships. 3. Transformative awareness and outreach. And 4. Institutionalized capacity development. As shown in this table, for each key result area, specific intended outcomes have been identified. I won't go into the details of this table this morning. To achieve the long-term objective of improved systematic disclosure and relative and utilization of EITI data to strengthen transparency and accountability in the extractive sector in the country, the following tables outline the expected outputs and activities that have been identified to achieve the intended results or outcomes in the next 3 years. The completion of these outputs is expected to produce the desired outcomes as a consequence, these outcomes will contribute to the achievement of the intended impact. To ensure the effective implementation of the action plan, program administration and management tools by way of established processes and working structures have also been identified and included in the action plan matrix. Again, I won't go into detail of this matrix, but you can go through them at your leisure as these materials will be distributed. So can we skip to slide 29, please? The initial gains of PH-EITI's mainstreaming efforts should be continuously supported. In a gradual pace, implementing agencies and participating companies should increasingly regard information disclosure as a matter of routine business activity in all thematic areas of PH-EITI implementation, such as in contract transparency, government revenues, company payments, beneficial ownerships, social and environmental expenditures, as well as gender and employment. As this happens, the role of the PH-EITI MSG and the PH-EITI Secretariat is seen as evolving from its current focal role in preparing the annual PH-EITI reports into one that effectively monitors the comprehensiveness and reliability of the agency and company disclosures, substantively analyzes the data, raises public awareness, convenes dialogues to inform public policy, and develops recommendations for policy reforms. On behalf of the MSG, I thank our partners in government, industry, and civil society for working with the PH-EITI in developing this mainstreaming action plan. A copy of the document is accessible at the PH-EITI website. As we all know, the work does not stop here. We call on all stakeholders to review the action plan and support its implementation. By working together, we can make mainstreaming transparency and accountability in the extractive industry a matter of good business and good governance for the good of all. Maraming salamat po, and good morning to everyone.
Thank you very much, Sir Vince, for explaining to us the importance of systematic disclosure. Well, indeed, there's still some work that needs to be done, especially in helping our stakeholders learn to utilize the data and a lot more to achieve our action plan. Well, now, again, we thank you, Mr. Vince Lazatin, for that very informative session. And now to share with us the PH-EITI work plan and progress of EITI implementation, let us welcome PH-EITI's National Coordinator, Mr. Eastward Manlises. Please take it away, Sir East.
Yusek Agabing, Asek Kabitan, and also the other members of the MSC, Attorney Ron Residoro, Sir Vince, and to the other members of the MSC who are joining us via Zoom, Facebook, or YouTube, and all the other participants who are joining us in these platforms. Thank you for joining us today in the national conference. For this segment, we will present to you the PH-EITI work plan for 2021 for this year and how we are progressing so far because we're already in the middle of the year. So the PH-EITI work plan for 2021 is founded on the medium-term strategic objectives that the multi-stakeholder group developed in October 2019. So it goes way back 3 years ago. It has been developed after a thorough review of PH-EITI's progress in implementing its previous work plan and with due consideration of the issues and concerns that stakeholders raised at PH-EITI subnational engagements in 2020. So the subnational engagement activities that you are joining in every year, they don't go two ways. We use the inputs from there in developing the work plan every year. The work plan is envisioned not only to be responsive to the EITI standard, but also to the data and information needs of extractive stakeholders. In addition, the work plan is aligned with some of the strategic priorities of the EITI International Board and includes deliverables related to the government's commitments to other international initiatives such as the Open Government Partnership, where the Philippines is a founding member. The work plan has been guided by the MSG's thematic priorities, which put emphasis on sustaining transparency and accountability in the extractive sector by moving towards systematic data disclosures. And just moments ago, we saw the mainstreaming action plan of the MSG. And also, we want to move to the expanding the coverage of the report and making disclosures more relevant and meaningful. The following are the thematic priorities adopted by the MSG for its work plan this year. Number one, systematic disclosure. Number two, transparency and accountability. This pertains to BO and contract transparency, or we also call it our integrity program. And then expanded coverage of non-metallic mines, IP royalties, gender inclusion, EITA mainstreaming in the small-scale mining sector. In crafting this work plan, the PH-EITI used the results-based management framework in identifying desired outcomes, outputs, success indicators, and specific activities to allow better monitoring of progress and impact. The specific deliverables and activities have been divided into 10 sub-programs, with each sub-program being handled by a member of the PH-EITI Secretariat. The following are the sub-programs developed to efficiently manage the implementation of the 2021 work plan. So again, we have 10, the first of which is validation. So for this year, the Philippines is actually going through its second validation. To recall, in 2017, the Philippines was first among more than 50 countries in the world to have been assessed with satisfactory progress in implementing the EITI standard. So this year, we are going through again that rigorous process. Second sub-program is on systematic disclosure. That is also why we have a presentation on mainstreaming moments ago. And then our program on integrity, again, this covers our initiatives on BO transparency, contract transparency, even anti-corruption. Fourth is our program on gender inclusion. Fifth, report production. So this is the usual reporting process. And then Sixth is our program of stakeholder engagement. Next is legislative advocacy. Next, communications, and then followed by our programs on resource mobilization and secretariat management. And at this point, we would just like to thank again Bantay Kita Publish What to Pay Philippines and USAID for also supporting this program this morning. In general, events and activities shall be held online in view of the ongoing COVID-19 situation. The plans and activities identified in the work plan shall be implemented with a total budget of 13.3 million pesos, and with the technical and administrative support of the PH-EITI Secretariat, including services of technical consultants. Following weeks of preparation and careful discussion, the MSG approved the current work plan in its 65th meeting on January 15, 2021. At this point, I would like to present to you our progress in implementing this work plan, because again, we are already past at the middle of the year. So for the first program on validation, we have published and submitted the 6th PH-EITI report to the EITI International. We submitted it in December last year, and we resubmitted an updated copy this March 2021. This report has a chapter on beneficial ownership disclosure. It is a follow-through or a follow-up chapter on previous beneficial ownership studies that we did, and also it contains information on the beneficial ownership data of some extractive companies. The 6th report is the basis of the 2021 EITI validation of the Philippines. I already mentioned that earlier. And again, under this program, we had pre-validation meetings and workshops to complete the validation templates that we submitted to the EITI International in April this year. And after that submission, we also had 16 validation stakeholder consultations. So we consult the validation team from Norway, where the EITI International is based. They conducted, with our help, we arranged 16 validation stakeholder consultations. The final validation report has been released this July, and the EITI board will make a final decision on the progress of the Philippines within 10 weeks from the release of the validation report. So we are hoping that the results will be favorable for the Philippines. Next program, systematic disclosure. We produced a mainstreaming feasibility study, and moments ago, we saw the mainstreaming action plan presented by Sir Vince Lezatin. We also enhanced the online reporting in the extractives tool, where our reporting entities are submitting their data on extractives. And we have accomplished our deliverables under the Department of Finance's OGP commitment. Next is our program on integrity. We already published oil, gas, and coal contracts on the PH-EITI contracts portal. So you please visit our contracts portal to view this new documents. Publication of the extractive sector's beneficial ownership data via the PH-EITI Beneficial Ownership Registry. You can find that in our website. And we also had preliminary meetings with the NCIP to enhance transparency in IP royalty payments, because year after year, we were experiencing concerns in the disclosure, in transparency when it comes to IP royalty payments. Under gender inclusion, the MSG created a TWG on gender to follow through with the recommendations of the PH-EITI gender study that was published last year. And we also had a roundtable discussion on gender in June, and we did an analysis of employment and gender data that our reporting company submitted through OR during the 7th reporting cycle. It's actually part of the 7th PH-EITI report, but we do not have time to present the analysis today. So we will have another activity to present this information. So those interested in the employment and gender data of the extractives, please watch out for our upcoming activities relating to this one. Next program is on report production. So again, we already completed the 6th PH-EITI report. And just today, we presented to you the key findings of the 7th PH-EITI report, all of its 4 chapters. Under stakeholder engagement, we already had 6 MSG meetings in 2021. That's a total of 70 meetings since the implementation of EITI in the Philippines. We also had a workshop to better understand the EITI standard because we, as many of you might already know, we have a new standard that's a 2019 EITI standard. And then we are partnering with the Bantay Kita Publish What You Pay Philippines for its project data. Preliminary meetings with members of the non-metallic mining sector was also had. Our goal is to include or involve all non-metallic mining, all non-metallic mines in the reporting process. As of now, we are only covering half of the sector. And then just today, we had the national conference. So thank you again to all those participating today. Under legislative advocacy, the MSG developed a legislative advocacy plan, and the goal is to institutionalize transparency and accountability in the extractives. And we thank Congressman Salceda for emphasizing the need to institutionalize EITI. We also, or the MSC also prepared a position paper on pending EITI bills for submission to Congress, and the MSC also participated in the HOR, or the House of Representatives Committee on Natural Resources hearing on EITI bills. That was in February of this year. Other communications, again, your recommendations, the issues that you raised, the concerns that you raised during our stakeholder engagement activities, they are all online. They are all recorded, and we are doing our best to address those issues or refer them to the proper EITI implementing agencies. So what's next for the PH-EITI in the remaining 5 months of the year? We know that we have just presented to you the key findings of the 7th report, but to reduce the lag of EITI reporting into 1 year, to make it more timely, we are producing an 8 PH-EITI report for this year. So the 8 PH-EITI reporting cycle will begin soon. So for our reporting entities, government, metallic mines, non-metallic mines, oil and gas, watch out for our announcement on the next reporting cycle. And then the 8 PH-EITI report is also planned to have a follow-up small-scale mining study or report. And then we're going to hold our online roadshow, or our online learning on extractives in August this year, in a few weeks from now. And then we also have an initiative to diagnose or to assess the corruption risks within the extractive industries. So the MSC will implement an anti-corruption diagnostics tool that was developed by the Natural Resource Governance Institute. And then, of course, the mainstreaming action plan that you saw earlier, we are going to implement that starting this year. So these are our progress in implementing the work plan, and also the things that you have to watch out for in the remainder of the year. Please visit our website to check our the progress in implementing these activities, and send us your feedback. You can email us or call us at the PH-EITI Secretariat. So again, thank you everyone. Tricia, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. East. It's great to know that there are actually a lot of improvements now towards the work plan. Great to hear the improvements in the work plan implementation. Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Eastward Manlisas. Now that we are done with the presentations, it is time to answer some of your questions. But before that, I know your eyes are already tired. Let's take a quick health break. When we come back, we will also do some more icebreakers, which I'm sure you enjoyed earlier via Slido. So please stay tuned. You may join by logging on to www.slido.com and join as a participant in a new Slido event with a new code PH-EITI NatCon 2021. Again, the new code is PH-EITI NatCon 2021. It's no longer NatCon 2021, which we had earlier. Now it's already PH-EITI NatCon 2021. Again, please stay with us. We will be back in a few minutes.
Despite challenges brought about by technology, information absorption in virtual space, online socialization, overall Unlearn employed the Freirean principles, allowing stakeholders to reflect, reciprocate, and have social exchange rather than unilateral mean of participation. So this year, PH-EITI invites you again to the OnLearn 2021 from August 23 to 27, which will be conducted in 5 regional clusters via Zoom. Please mark your calendars. PH-EITI will send invite to the LGUs, companies, and CSOs from these regions on the first week of August.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're still here at the PH-EITI National Conference 2021. Before we proceed with your questions or the question and answer segment of our program, let's first do another set of icebreaker quizzes via Slido. Be sure to join in as a participant by typing the new code PH-EITI NatCon 2021. Again, the new code is PH-EITI NatCon 2021. I hope you're still with us and still ready to join our mini game. If you want an easier access, we have provided for you a QR code flashed on your screens. Let's move on to the first question from the National Wealth Shares portal. What is the manner of allocation of the LGU share from the proceeds of national wealth if the natural resources are located two or more LGUs? Again, type in your answers as fast as you can. The question is from the National Wealth Shares portal. What is the manner of allocation of the LGU share from the proceeds of national wealth if natural resources are located two or more LGUs? And your choices are A, population 30%, land area 70%, B, population 75%, land area 25%, C, population 70%, land area 30%. Type in your answers now. Okay, in about few seconds, we will see the correct answer. This, if you remember, the National Wealth Shares portal is a really crucial tool that LGUs, its stakeholders, have also been requesting to see their share, to have easier access to data as well. Again, you have 30 seconds, almost 30 seconds left to answer that question. What is the manner of allocation of the LGU share from the proceeds of national wealth if the natural resources are located two or more LGUs? Are we ready to share the answers? Are you ready for the answers? There you go. Most of you answered letter C, 70% population and 30% land area. We got 59% of responses for that. For letter A, 28% responded population 30%, land area 70%. And letter B, we have 30% of the respondents, 75% population, and land area of 25%. I hope you were able to get the right answer, of course. Again, the answer is letter C. Let's move on to our next question. This one comes from the Mainstreaming Action Plan. Per guidance of EITI, systematic disclosure means, quote, EITI's disclosure requirements are meant through routine and publicly available reporting from what sectors? A, company and government agencies. B, civil society organizations and companies. C, civil society organizations and government agencies. Or letter D, both A and C. Type in your answers now. This was our second to the last presentation before we went on a very quick health break. Congratulations to those who have been getting correct answers since we started our icebreakers. Okay, let's check out who got the right answers. Looks like everyone's really paying attention. Letter A, 25% answered company and government agencies. Nobody answered letter B, civil society organizations and companies. And for letter C, we only had 5% civil society organizations and government agencies. Let's find out what the correct answer is. Of course, it's letter A. 25% of you answered company and government agencies. So 25% of you got the correct answer. Thank you very much for really paying attention to all our speakers. Thank you also, everyone, for joining and interacting with us via Slido. This is an during extraordinary times, we step up our game. We don't lose the fun of it. And I hope you also had fun with us via interacting with us on Slido. Now let's call on our speakers again to answer some of our questions or to answer some of the questions from our stakeholders. Still with us are Mr. Eastward Manlisas, Assistant Secretary Maria Teresa Habitan, Attorney Ronald Rex Residoro. We also have with us still Mr. Rainier Diaz. And also joining in to respond to the questions is the Director of Mines and Geosciences Bureau, Attorney Wilfredo Moncano, and Assistant Director Rick De La Cruz of the Energy Resource Development Bureau of the Department of Energy, or DOE. The PH-EITI Secretariat Outreach team has collected some questions that you guys sent in over Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. So let's read some of those. If you still have some questions or comments, you may continue sending that over via Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube comment section. First question from Zoom is for Sir Rainier of DBM. Sir Rainier, this is just an inquiry from PLGU Masbate, or from the Provincial Local Government Unit of Masbate, why there is a delayed release of the 40% share of the LGU from metallic mining. The latest share we received was for the period from October to December 2019, released last December 23, 2020. We got the same question from ACSO representative saying, okay, I think that's it. That's the same question also from ACSO representative. Serenia?
Yes, good morning, Trish, and thank you for the question from the PLGU of Masbate and from the CSO. Actually, our process is when it was collected, like in the case of 2019. May we go back to that question again? 2019, and it was released just in 2020 because
Yes.
our process is the collecting agencies need to have that reported first and reconciled with our BTR, or Bureau of the Treasury, and afterwards they will issue a joint certification. That joint certification, usually if it's collected, if it was collected in 2019, they will report it by the first quarter of 2020. And then once they reconciled it, we receive the papers, and if it's complete and in proper order, we immediately release it, actually within 15 calendar days, because that's in our citizens charter. So our releasing of the funds is highly dependent on the submission of the joint certifications from the collecting agency and the BTR. That would be all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I hope that answers the question of the PLGU of Masbate. We got a comment here from the PH-EITI mainstreaming consultant. Congratulations to DBM for providing accessible open data to the public. Then we have another question from the House of Representatives Policy and Budget Management, or Budget Research Department. It says PHEITA legislation is part of the PDP and the country's commitment under the OGP. However, it is hampered by the following issues. First, the absence of legislation mandating its implementation. They can be easily amended or even set aside with changes in administration. Second, there's the difficulty of acquiring data and cooperation from the extractive industries. Third, there are legal barriers, which explains the difficulty of acquiring information pertaining to Section 270 of the NIRC and Article 81 of the Omnibus Investments Act. So the question is, what are other issues or what are the other issues and challenges faced by the PHEITI which could be addressed through legislation? Perhaps Asik Habidan can respond to the question.
Thank you. Parang hindi pa sapat yung challenges facing us which can be cured by legislation. As far as PHAITI is concerned, we would very much welcome the institutionalization of EITI through legislation. We've been very lucky that we have managed to remain as an institution already for two administrations, and we hope that we will continue to function as such to even after 2022, and legislation certainly will help us. It's really a major obstacle, the confidentiality clauses that now exist in the National Internal Revenue Code. Certainly, it's not just PHEITI which would benefit if these confidentiality provisions are relaxed by Congress. Beneficial ownership is also something that would greatly help translate into more transparent governance management in many of our government agencies, and also to help us towards more equitable development planning. So I think that's that's one, the institutionalization of the HEITI, the lifting of confidentiality clauses for at least for tax payments and also for beneficial ownership. If Congress can help us by crafting the laws to mitigate these concerns, it will be a great help for all of us.
All right, thank you very much, Asik Habidan. But there's another question from the House of Representatives Policy and Budget Research Department. With the issuance of Executive Order 130 on April 14, 2021 by President Duterte, lifting the 9-year moratorium on new mining contracts, is there a need for a new legislation to set the terms for taxes and royalties, among others, for the mining industry? Asik Habidan, maybe you can answer this as well. And Director Montano may also chime in.
Yes. So, a new fiscal regime which would encompass all the extractive sector will certainly help in making the extractive industry, metallic, non-metallic mining, as well as oil and gas, contribute much more to the growth of the economy, to expanding the pie, the economic pie of the country. And certainly a proper tax framework, transparent tax framework, more equitable sharing between the government and private sector investments will certainly help us in achieving this. We would like that this be, we already have a framework proposed to Congress, and Congressman Joey Salceda mentioned that this morning, and is one of our sponsors to this, and we certainly hope that this can move forward. This has already had several hearings in the House, no? So it will help if it can be pushed forward as an important piece of legislation.
Thank you, ma'am. Director Montano, please.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for that question. Actually, in the drafting of the implementing rules and regulations of EO 130, we had a lot of discussions because we are aware that fiscal legislation, fiscal regime cannot be included in a administrative order. No? So that's why in the meeting, actually we had 6 PTWG meeting of those that comprise the group in the IRR for EO 130. we removed we removed that provision that set the minimum royalties, no, the additional imposition of royalties to mining companies, because I think we don't have, no, that the department do not have jurisdiction in imposing those royalties. So we would ask, of course, we would ask Congress to help us pass a legislation that would impose, because the NGB is supporting that move to impose additional royalty to those mining operations outside mineral reservations. Right now, the discrepancy is quite big, no? But 9% excise tax and 5% mineral royalty for those inside mineral reservations, but only 4% for those outside. So there's and for the same mineral commodity, that's a big difference. That's why MGB would, of course, would ask support from Congress for the passing of a bill or passing of a law imposing mineral royalties outside declared mineral reservations. Thank you. It's not in the
All right.
IR 130.
All right, thank you very much, Asik Habitan and Director Moncana, for those insights. We got another question from Facebook for DBM. As to date, what available year is on the National Wealth Portal? When will the latest data be available?
Yes, thank you for that question. For the 2021 releases, we're planning to have it uploaded in the website within the next week. We're just finalizing the data that will be presented in the portal. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. We got a comment from Zoom. The only way, and it reads, the only way to increase the GDP is to have more mines in production. Just imagine what Tampakan, King, and Buyungan can contribute in mining projects. Take a long time to develop from exploration to production. Thank you very much to the person who sent in this comment. And another question again from Zoom. Is there a mechanism to monitor the royalty payments to indigenous peoples and how these funds are dispensed? We don't have a representative from NCIP, but anyone can respond to this.
East, can you handle the
Unmute.
question?
East, you're on mute.
You're in the
Okay.
There
Hello,
you go.
Trisha, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you
Okay.
now.
Okay. Yes, we actually, the PH-EITI actually has a monitoring tool for IP royalty payments. And the NCIP in an unbanked resolution in 2015 supported the rollout of this monitoring tool, but we encountered challenges in the implementation of the monitoring tool. In our presentation of the work plan for 2021, we actually mentioned something about enhancing the monitoring of IP royalty payments. We already had preliminary meetings with the new management of the NCIP. So we are working on training regional, provincial NCIP offices in submitting their reports through the online reporting in the extractives tool to improve our monitoring and reconciliation of NCIP data. So yes, the answer is the short answer to the question is yes, we have a monitoring tool for NCIP.
Thank you, East. Now, we have another insight coming from Zoom, and it reads on the COMP presentation on SDMP, all about programs and money spent, but no indication of results and the impact on mining communities, such as health, income, education, etc. Mining companies should undertake independent socioeconomic surveys to measure the real impact of SDMPs on the progress to attain sustainability of mining communities. Maybe Attorney Ron, you may want to respond to this.
Yes, I think that's the limitation of the report, because EITI just measures and records the payments made under the SDMP. However, it's also not correct to say na we are not monitoring results. I understand MGB has an ongoing program to monitor the long-term impacts of SDMP, no, Director? And I think that really is the right way to go. It's not enough that we dole out this money every year. We have to be assured that they do make a difference. The Mining Act has been in effect since 1995, no? So we really should be seeing long-term sustainable impacts within host communities. And I think MGB is already doing that. And even to the point of tweaking social development and management programs where necessary. Kasi if you will notice, karamihan ng SDMP requests ng communities are very heavy on infrastructure, which we think may not be ideal. Because infrastructure, like roads, street lighting, sewage, waterworks, is really more of a government function. And if we delegate that to mining companies, it creates a sort of dependence, which is not really ideal. The SDMP should be tooled towards supporting government initiatives and ensuring that the community's capacity to survive after mining operations are completed is ensured, no? So, yun po. I think si Director Moncano can shed more light on the impact assessment monitoring that they are doing at the Bureau.
Thank you, Atty. Ron. No? Yes, actually, the MGB, one division of the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, the Mining Safety Environment and Social Development Division, is the one involved in monitoring and crafting of programs for the SDP in collaboration with the host and neighboring communities. No? We have a record of how many thousand classrooms have been built, how many thousand scholars have been graduated, how many livelihood programs have been created. But of course, there are some evolution in the programs, no? Because in the earlier years, year 2000, 2005, the programs were more on parang mga babuyan, magbigay ng mga baboy noong una. But later on, it appears that this is not sustainable because pagka ibigay mo sa isang pamilya, halimbawa, may birthday o may kasal o may fiesta, yung baboy mo na binigay doon from the mining company, ginawa inihaw at naging pagkain. So wala na, hindi na naging sustainable yung practice. That's why there are evolutions in the program, and we're more on sustainable, especially yung ating education program, yung mga scholars natin, because these are the more long-term impact project dahil pag yung anak ng isang pamilya na mining community becomes a scholar and graduated from college and gets a good quality of job, then he gets to improve his living condition and perhaps help also the family. So, merong evolution na ng aming program. But if PH-EITI would want to get a copy of the accomplishment of the SDMP program from, I think, year 2004, no? 2004 up to 2020, and we can give and provide a copy to PH-EITI. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Ron, and thank you, Director Montano. But there's another question, just to follow up on that one. Would the evaluation of the results of the SDMP be more appropriate as a government function? Attorney Ron or Director Montano?
Well, I don't really understand the question because the evaluation is indeed with the MGB, which is part of government, no? But siguro as an enhancement to that, we should look into involving experts, developmental experts at the planning stage, no? Because right now, when we plan our 5-year SDMPs, ang primary parties involved are the mining companies and the community. No, but sometimes we see, katulad nga ng nabanggit ni Director Mongcano kanina, what the communities want may not be necessarily what they need. No? So marami sa kanila nangihingi ng baboy for hog dispersal, but if they are not yet capacitated to run a hog farm, they don't have the necessary inputs, we can be assured na in a year or 2 years time, nakain na lahat ng baboy. No, and that's not sustainable. So maybe at the first instance, meron na tayong expert from developmental experts saying na yung gusto ninyong project may not be a good fit for this community dahil hindi niyo pa alam magpatakbo ng ganitong negosyo. Baka naman mas maganda we spend the SDMP fund on training and capacity building muna on the first year before we embark on more complicated projects, more ambitious projects that this time we can already sustain. Yun.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. There's another question for you, Attorney Ron, from Filipina Incorporated in Baguio, Benguet. Can you use royalty fees to fund SDMP? Is there a legal basis to allow this?
Well, no, because the royalties are different from the SDMP fund. No, royalties accrue to surface rights owners or indigenous peoples organizations by virtue of their rights as surface rights owners. No, so payment yon for use of the land. No, but the SDMP is different. It's not a payment. It's not a tax. This is a fund taken from the pocket of the corporation to be spent on projects identified by the community. So hindi rin siya perang ibinibigay sa community. It comes in the form of projects or programs. No, so the company cannot use royalty payments to fund the SDMP. Hindi
All
pwede
right,
yun.
thank you. Thank you very much, Attorney Ron. We got another question from Zoom. Can water utilities and timber industry be considered also as an extractive industry? They are extracting also natural resources from the environment. I think Director Moncano might want to respond to this.
Yes, I agree. No, I agree. But I think right now, of course, these are resources that are extracted from the natural ground. No? So I agree that this should also be considered. But I don't know what is the scope of PH-EITI. I think EITI is more on the minerals and non-metallic and metallic minerals. I don't know what is the scope of the ITI later, but I agree that these are also extractive industry.
Thank you, sir.
Trisha,
Yes,
can
ma'am.
I add to that?
Sure, Asik Kabitan.
Internationally, there's discussion about including in the initiative, in the EITI initiative, other extractives like what you said, timber, water, even fisheries, no, can be considered as, in a way, non-renewable extractive resources of government, over which governance we need to be very careful. But right now, the scope of PH-EITI is really only mineral mines, non-metallic, metallic and non-metallic mineral extraction, as well as oil, gas, and coal. Let's not forget coal. Coal is part of that. Who knows whether the coverage of the ITI can be expanded, but certainly legislation in the future can deal with this.
All
And
right.
if I
Thank you
may
very
just comment, sandali lang, if I may just comment to an earlier question on the monitoring of the SDMP. Attorney Ron mentioned that the Mining Act 1995 was enacted in 1995, so it's more than 20 years old, almost approaching 30 years already. And I believe it's high time that we really take a good look at how well we have or the institutions that are in charge of implementing this act um, have fulfilled the intent, the spirit of the provisions, and certainly the SDMP and how it's being implemented um, is considered to be very critical in how this has impacted the local communities in which we have the mining activities. And future partnerships among communities, government, and industry will will be benefited if we now take a good look at how well or how not well we have implemented SDMP. So we might very well have new dimensions in which to plan the SDMP, how well we can capacitate LGUs in fact in planning or in as what was mentioned before, discerning between what they want and what they need, and how government can be the more active partner because the partnership it's a partnership. The mining companies are not supposed to take over what the government is really supposed to provide for the communities.
All right, thank you very much, Asik Habitan and Director Moicano. There's a lot of interest. There's really growing interest on the SDMPs. The next question, or at least the next comment from Zoom, is still about SDMPs. Some are asking, are the copies of current SDMPs available online somewhere? In the interest of transparency, this information should be available along with annual assessment of measurable results. Does anyone want to respond to this?
Hi, Tricia. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. The PH-EITI is actually working with the Mines and Geosciences Bureau to
Mhm.
disclose additional documents aside from the contracts of the mining companies, to
Mhm.
disclose annexes or other relevant documents, other useful documents via the contracts portal. And one of this is the copies or the reports on SDMPs. And we already have some SDMP reports uploaded in our contracts portal. Again, you can check that via the contracts pheati.dof.gov.ph. There are some contracts there with associated documents related to SDMP, but not all contracts have associated documents with SDMP. It's something that we are still working on. But the PHEITI reports actually have or actually collect data on the beneficiaries of these STMDs, not just the amount, but we also collect information on the type of or the nature of projects and also the beneficiaries. And these information are available in the published copy of the report, the printed copy of the report, and also in our extractive data generator. The edge or the extractive data generator is also can also be found in our website. So please visit our website. We have a lot of data there, including information on SDMP.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. East. There's another clarification on the SDMP. Here's a question. Can we be clarified on the total COVID assistance of 2.2 billion in Attorney Residoro's presentation? PNOC or PNOCEC contributed 2 billion while the MGB website shows over 400 million contribution of mining companies. It does not tally. Maybe Mr. East or Assistant Director De La Cruz of DOE can shed light to this.
We'll ask Assistant Director De La Cruz to also comment on the PNOCEC. But in terms of the data that the PHEAT was able to collect through OR, we only cover companies. Only cover certain companies, so it might be possible. It is really possible that the data does not tally with the MGB, and also the PNOC is not under the I don't know the correct term, jurisdiction of the MGB. So that 2.2 billion will really not be reflected in the MGB data. Again, the answer to the question is MGB data might have covered more companies because in the PHEITI report, we only cover operating mines, including half of the non-metallic mines, not all metallic mines. So there really may be a difference. So what's the difference of the data that the PH-EITI presents? These are reconciled information. So we reconcile this data with the information we got from both the government and companies. Thank you. Assistant Director De La Cruz, you might want to comment on the PNOC contribution. And I think these are dividends directly remitted to the Bureau of the Treasury.
Good morning. For ERDB, for our bureau, we also don't have any data regarding that contribution. In particular, PNOC coal contracts, they don't have any production right now. And also with the oil and gas, they have a small portion in the Malampaya. So probably in other bureau of the Department of Energy, the Finance Bureau. But for the ERDB, we don't have, we cannot confirm that 2.2 billion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, East, and to Assistant Director De La Cruz. We got a specific question on MPSA. Ang expired MPSA po ba ay pwedeng i-amend para mapalawig ang kanilang MPSA? Ano po ang legality nito like in Palawan at ang iba pa po? At ang iba po bang mag-expire na MPSA, pwede rin ba silang mag-apply na i-amend ang kanilang MPSA habang sila ay nag-renew kung sakali? Maybe Director Moncano can answer this.
Yes, thank you for the question. No? Actually, the important or the critical item in this statement is whether the MPSA holder was able to file the renewal applications prior to the expiry date. Yun ang importante talaga because if the mining company, the MPSA holder, was able to file the renewal application prior to the actual expiry date, then that mining application will continue, no? Even if it has not been acted, no? Hindi pa talaga, wala pang lumabas na actual na renewal ng MPSA, that MPSA still remain existing. But if the mining company, MPSA holder, filed the supposedly the renewal application after the expiry date, then that's a different story, no? Ibang istorya. But kaya nga I said that what is critical here is whether the MPSA holder was able to file the renewal application prior to the expiry date. Kung nakapile siya, whether nag-expire actually yung kanyang yung MPSA, that MPSA will still is considered existing because hindi pa na-actionan ng gobyerno. Yun. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again, Director Moncano. We have a question here. Do we have any update on the two EITI bills pending in Congress for institutionalizing PH-EITI? Any MSG member can respond, Asik Habitan or Attorney Ron?
Attorney Ron, I'm sure we only had that one hearing, right, in February.
Yes.
So, sana it can be taken up again soon by the appropriate committee in Congress. Kasi during that hearing, in fact, there was full MSG support. All the sectors were represented as resource persons during that hearing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Asik Habitan. And we just note, if you remember, even Representative Salceda was saying the importance or stressing the importance of institutionalizing the PH-EITI. Well, anyway, we have another one from Zune. The existing policy has no specific guidelines in terms of reconciliation of data between BIR and MGB, and the collection of government royalty and taxes. BIR based its collection in the applied volume, while MGB based its collection on the actual volume of exported ore, which provide a huge discrepancies in collection of taxes vis-a-vis royalty for 5%. Thus, BIR should draft a clear policy on the basis of collection of excise tax. Maybe Asa Cabitan and Director Moncano can respond to this.
On the part of MGB, actually what MGB collect is only the royalties inside mining operations inside mineral reservation. Yun lang ang aming kinokolekta. All the excise taxes are collected by the BIR. No? That has been our policy na it's based on exported items. And the MTV still has to follow that one. But if there's a need to clarify that one, then perhaps an agreement between among BIR and MTV may have to be done.
All right, Asa Cabitan, please.
Well, as Director Mugan is correct, MGB is in charge of collecting the royalty fees. BIR is in charge of the excise taxes. And although seemingly the tax base is the same, there could be slight differences in timing, for example. So I agree with the director of MGB that perhaps to further refine this process and to make it more transparent, a review of the working guidelines between MGB and BIR is in order.
All right. That's it, I think, for all that we've read all the questions. Again, thank you very much to our participants for all your questions and for your comments. We appreciate you sending those to us because we all miss having conferences, seminars, face to face. But you sending your questions only show to us that you guys are still participating. You guys are all ears, all eyes in our discussions. And we appreciate that. We appreciate your insights. We appreciate the time that you've been sharing us. Now, some of the questions had been responded to already by the PH-EITI Secretariat in this Zoom chat box. Once again, we thank all our speakers for answering the questions from our stakeholders. And to our stakeholders, thank you for participating in our discussion. Thank you again, Mr. Eastward Manlises, Assistant Secretary Maria Teresa Habitan, Attorney Ronald Rex Residoro, Mr. Rainier Diaz, MGB Director Wilfredo Moncano, and DOE Assistant Director Rick De La Cruz. And now, to officially end our 2021 National Conference, we call on the Governor of the Provincial Government of Quirino, the President of the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, or ULA, and also a member of the PH-EITI MSG, Honorable Dakila Cardot Kua.
Good afternoon to everyone. From the time the Philippine Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, or PH-EITI, was formally created in 2013 via Executive Order 147, consisted with the Philippine government commitment to implement the global standard for the open and good governance of oil, gas, and mineral resources, there have been much that we have achieved together. Among the 50 countries implementing the EITI all over the world, the Philippines is the first to post satisfactory progress. Indeed, we have facilitated the implementation of innovative, systematic, and transparent data management and reporting systems that made available reconciled data about extraction of the country's natural resources. And quite commendably, in recognition of the positive impact of EITI data being readily and publicly accessible, which enables timely and comprehensive disclosure of information for public analysis, we are seeing the effective mainstreaming of these principles, namely transparency, accountability, and people's participation in local government transactions and processes well beyond the area of extractive industries. Over the past 3 hours, we have pursued further deepening of our commitment to make the EITI a valuable development mechanism. Again, we have proven that the National Conference serves as a platform for sharing updates on EITI implementation in the Philippines, an exchange of perspectives on ensuring sustainable governance of natural resources through the data reported by companies, LGUs, and national government agencies. Despite the lingering threat of COVID, we are able to bring together stakeholders from national and local governments, from extractive companies, from civil society, development partners, from the academe, and the media. And we would like to thank the members of the MSG and our friend from the Department of Budget and Management for sharing with us the highlights of the 7th PH-EITI Country Report and the new portal for national wealth shares. We highly appreciate my good friend Congressman Joey Salceda for sharing with us his view on how the lifting of the moratorium for new projects in the extractive industries will impact our economy. His perspective corroborates the prospect of a long-term growth in the industry, which could be a result of the lifting of the moratorium on new mining projects. We have also heard gradual oil and gas sector transition to decarbonization. It may interest our EITI network to note that alongside our partnership with the MSG or multi-stakeholder group, ULAP being the umbrella organization of local government units and local government officials, is taking the EITI principles a step further as underpinnings to the localization of the green agenda for development. As LGUs endeavor to reboot the local economy, we capacitate LGUs with wider bandwidth for development by inspiring them to break away from the brick and mortar mindset that stunts the nurturing of open governance, capitalize on innovative clean technologies, reject carbon-emitting ventures, and opt for the environment-friendly pathways that promote inclusivity and resilience in the economy, in the community, and in the ecosystem as well. Our efforts to rebuild our economies from the pandemic will have a profound impact, as inaction or a resumption of business as usual may lead to grave consequences. We are all in a race to seize the opportunities for a green recovery and to net zero carbon footprint. It is a race none of us can truly win alone, nor one that as a global community we can afford to lose. In the region, China, Japan, and South Korea are already beginning to rally behind the goal of reaching net zero, particularly in the extractive industry. With the right elements in place, transparency, accountability, and participatory governance, the net zero plan will facilitate adoption of the technologies of the future to support socio-economic growth and resilience that are compatible with the new and better normal. This goes well with exciting post-COVID-19 perspective, demand for gold as a liquid resource, and nickel as a part of the global trend on utilizing electric vehicles. Both gold and nickel can contribute a conservative maximum of $21 billion in foreign exchange earnings for our country. For the presentations, LGUs are definitely glad to hear that there were about 56 billion pesos share from the national wealth collections, 1.48 billion pesos of LGU collections, and 4.3 billion pesos of environmental and social expenditures from oil, gas, and mining industries for fiscal year 2019. We welcome the passage of the new tax regime, the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentive for Enterprises Act, or CREATE. By reducing the corporate income tax from 30 to 25, it will allow companies in the extractive industries to reinvest their savings towards expansion or effective implementation of social development and management programs to uplift the lives of the people in their host communities. In closing, on behalf of the EITI's Multi-Stakeholder Group, or MSG, I would like to thank our guests and resource persons, particularly Representative Joey Salceda, DOF Secretary Carlos Dominguez, DOF Undersecretary Bayani Agabin, our partners and friends from various sectors for participating in this year's national conference. We hope to see you in the future initiatives of PH-EITI. Again, thank you for your contribution, congratulations, and good day to everyone. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. Maraming salamat po.
All right, thank you very much, Governor Dakila Carlo Cua. And now we pause for a bit. The whole PHEITI is deeply saddened by the news of Miss Nori Garcia's passing. Miss Nori Garcia is the former coordinator of Bantay Kita and also a member of the PHEITI MSG. We are grateful for your service, Miss Nori. The PHEITI will always remember and honor your memory. May you rest in peace. And there you have it. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this year's PHEITI National Conference. We want to hear your feedback so we can keep on improving our future logistics and content. Kindly fill out the feedback form that is accessible at the link that you will see now on your screens. That's tinyurl.com/PHEITI NatCon feedback form. Again, that's tinyurl.com/PHEITI NatCon feedback form. You will also find that in your chat boxes. You can get your e-certificate for this event, for this activity, or for this event upon your submission of the feedback form. Again, please stay for a bit, and we want to hear from you. We truly want to hear your feedback on this national conference, and we had a great time with you. Thank you very much once again to all those who participated in our icebreakers, to all those who listened and sent in their questions and their comments. We appreciate your time and your effort, your insights as well. And there you have it, the 2021 PHEITI National Conference and the launch of the 7th PHEITI report. The PHEITI would like to express gratitude to the following: Bantay Kita and the U.S. Aid for the support to this year's NatCon, the CMIO, and the GSD personnel of the DOF for the technical support. Thank you also to the student interns from USJR. And for a copy of the report and other resources, you may visit the PHEITI website. That's pheiti.dof.gov.ph. We also encourage everyone to follow PHEITI's social media accounts. For Facebook, it's Philippine EITI. For Twitter, it's at PHEITI. And for LinkedIn, it's Philippine Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. A Visayan and Ilocano translation of the proceedings of this national conference will be available in the social media platforms of PHEITI very soon. Again, thank you very much for joining us. And this has been Trisha Tarada. Keep safe, everyone, at mabuhay po kayo.